Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor John McNicholas, and in the absence of the Lord Mayor, Councillor Anne Lucas, who is sadly unwell, I will be chairing today's meeting. On behalf of everyone, I have sent flowers to Anne, together with our very best wishes, and I hope that she feels better soon. Can I say on a personal level that I know Anne is thrilled at all the messages of goodwill that she has received, and she will respond as soon as she's allowed to do so. Can I also take the opportunity of offering best wishes to Councillor John Mutton, who's having a medical appointment today prior to medical treatment, and I'm sure we will wish him best wishes as well. I'd like to welcome you all to this live meeting of the City Council. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. We continue to meet remotely today in line with government regulations to stay safe and to keep within guidelines. I would like to remind everyone that I will be expecting members to treat each other courteously and with respect and acknowledge the role of the chair. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Just to confirm, the apologies we've received are from the Lord Mayor, Councillor Lucas and Councillor John Mutton. Thank you.
Can I also add that Councillor Clifford will be leaving the meeting at 3 o'clock in order to take his wife for the vaccination. Item 2, agreement of the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of December 2020. I call on Councillor Mal Mutton to move.
Formally moved, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh to second.
Formally second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Can members please unmute their microphones? All in favour?
Agreed.
Aye.
Agreed.
Any against? Was that somebody against it? Any abstentions? I hear none. The minutes are agreed. Can members please mute their microphones? Item 3, correspondence and announcements of the Lord Mayor. The Queen's New Year's Honours List. Members may be aware of the awards made to the following people associated with the city in the recent New Year's Honours List. I am very pleased to see these people recognised, and I shall take them in alphabetical order. Brendan Peter Connor, former chairman of the Midlands Air Ambulance Charity, is set to receive an OBE for his voluntary and charitable services to the community in the West Midlands. John Keeley is set to receive an MBE for his philanthropic work in Coventry, helping disadvantaged youth. John has worked with Positive Youth Foundation, YMCA Coventry and Warwickshire, and Coventry Refuge and Migrant Centre to ensure that their clients, who may have no experience or basic English skills, are given the opportunity to secure a job and contribute to society. Haroon Mahmood is set to receive a BEM for services to the community in the West Midlands, particularly during COVID-19. Haroon lives in Coventry, but works as the relief manager for Wells Pharmacy in Darlaston. When the pandemic hit and the national lockdown was imposed, he ensured that all those who were unable to leave their homes received their prescriptions. Lee Pardy McLaughlin, one of our own employees, is principal social worker in Children's Services, is set to receive an OBE for his services to social work. Lee joined Coventry City Council in 2016, and in a short time, his achievements have made a huge contribution to making Children's Services a great place for social workers to learn, develop, and continually improve. He has established signs of safety as a way of life across social work practice, created and developed the Social Work Academy, as well as launching Practice Week, which continues to challenge and improve the city's work with children and families. And finally, it's a pleasure to say Councillor David Skinner is set to receive an MBE for his services to the Coventry community. After time with the Royal Air Force, David was a career foreign, now diplomatic service officer, and is very proud to hold 3 Queen's Commissions. He has represented Westwood Ward since 2006 and worked tirelessly and with dedication for his residents and Coventry overall, including as a Neighbourhood Watch coordinator. The Lord Mayor will be writing on behalf of the City Council to all the recipients, sending our congratulations, which they so richly deserve. I've been notified that the following members wish to speak. I will be calling them in this order, and there is no need for those members to raise their hands, and that will be Councillors Duggins and Ridley. Councillor Duggins.
Deputy Lord Mayor, thank you very much. And can I first of all identify with your best wishes both to Anne and John. Lord Mayor, I have congratulated David on his MBE. We shared some exchanges, as we often do, on the social media, and it really is warmest congratulations to David, who has been awarded this honour for his services to the community of Coventry. I know how he keeps in touch with his residents, and I'm always grateful that he helps get our message across around all things COVID. As has already been mentioned, David was a member of the RAF and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and many of us have been astonished by his incredible stories of his overseas service. Since 2006, of course, David has been a committed ward councillor for Henley, representing the residents, as said, of Westwood and working hard for his community and the city. So once again, well done and congratulations, David. I wonder what you are, what you're going to put next to your MBE. I did make a suggestion, but you might like to share that with colleagues. In respect to Lee Pardee-McLaughlin, I think Pat Seaman may wish to make comments about Lee. What I can say is that Lee was part of a team that was put together by John Gregg, which effectively helped us to rebuild children's services. And frankly, colleagues, without Lee, I doubt we'd be in the position we are today. And that is the fact that when we get a further and a future Ofsted inspection, I think we will really be in a position to go forward from requires improvement to good. And I think Lee has played his full part in that. Finally, I'd like to say a little bit about Nancy Cairns, who the first time I attended.
Councillor Duggins, can you hold on that for a while? I need to.
Oh, sorry, John.
Nancy.
Sorry, I
No
will.
problem.
Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
Councillor Ridley.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Can I take the opportunity to welcome you to the chair, albeit in somewhat unfortunate circumstances, and send our very best wishes to Councillor Anne Lucas as well. You know, everyone in the Conservative group is thinking of her. She's had a very difficult year, shall we say. I know we all have, but nobody wants to be dealing with COVID in their year as Lord Mayor. So we do all send our very best wishes on to her. I did just want to extend the congratulations of the Conservative group really to everybody on that list, but obviously in particular Lee Pardee-McLaughlin and also Councillor David Skinner. I've known David now for a number of years. David first got on the council, as George said, back in 2006, and he was actually the first member of the Conservative group to introduce an email newsletter to his residents, and probably one of the first on the council to do it. And the thing that always sort of amazes me about David is he's one of our more senior elected members, but he's always willing to try new things. You know, every day is a school day for David. And I can remember sitting down a couple of years ago with David and teaching him all about Twitter. So, you know, there's no excuse for other people if they're not. It's a good way of, unless your name's Donald Trump, of course, but it's a great way of engaging with the public by and large. And I think that's one of the things that David does. I think the other thing I'd say about David as well is he is such a modest individual, and he genuinely believes in being courteous to people and trying to find consensus. And he's one of these people that will always seek out things that he agrees with you on rather than seek out conflict with you. And I really do think that going forward, there is something in that, you know, and we should all be kinder to each other and more courteous to each other and just try and find a way forward, really. So I was absolutely thrilled to see his name in the New Year's Honours list. And I know that other colleagues in the group feel that way as well. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ridley. I've got Councillor Lapser. Oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure I know something that David won't do, and that's actually cross the floor of the chamber. I've got Councillor Lapser, who's indicated that he would like to speak. Councillor Lapser.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and again, welcome to the chair. As David knows, how much of a high esteem I hold him in, it's huge congratulations for David, because the amount of work that David has put in over the years goes way what could be classed as normal. He's up all hours of the day, keeping residents informed. As soon as he hears something, he passes information on, and that is cross-party information as well. I know David and I sort of have a little joke about him being a spy and with all his stories coming forward. And I used to be a foot soldier in the Cold War years, but no one deserves it any more than David for services to the community. And I'd also put forward, I've worked so closely with John Keeley, especially through the pandemic, with my links with Langer Aid and Calcer Aid. And a lot of people don't know this, but John supplied thousands and thousands of items and was distributed to community groups, old age pensioners, and everything through the Langer Aid. So I'm want to congratulate John, because he does so much behind the scenes as well as in, you know, sort of in front of the scenes. Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lapser. I've noted in the chat column that Councillor Brown will be leaving the meeting at 2:55. Councillor Seaman has indicated she wishes to speak. Councillor Seaman.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I just also want to take the opportunity to add my congratulations to all those that have received awards, and also to pick out Lee Pardy McLaughlin and his services and fantastic work for children's services within our city, but also to recognise all those other employees within children's services that have helped develop various initiatives to bring about improvement what we offer for all of our children and young people in the city. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Seaman. I've got Councillor Skinner, who no doubt is going to respond to those very kind words that have been offered. David. Councillor Skinner.
Deputy Lord Mayor, thank you very much indeed. When I first saw the notice of the award, I burst into tears. My wife had to look after me, but I promised I'll try not to burst into tears again. It's a great honour to be a member of this council. Westwood Ward is very varied, very interesting, very dynamic. If I may just answer Marcus's comment, it is true that the most dangerous double agent in British history, Kim Philby, invited me for dinner in Bahrain. It is true that the first member of the SIS, the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, later Baroness Park of Monmouth, it is true that I helped her over a few things. It is also true that I helped one or two others of the friends how they're referred to in our service, to the point that at one point the security police in the country concerned parked outside my house and not outside his. But I can assure you that I wasn't a spy. I could never shoot as well as Sir Sean Connery. I could never run as fast as Daniel Craig. And I can certainly assure you that my wife would not have approved of some of the, shall we say, off-duty activities of the James Bond characters. But thank you all very, very much indeed. I'll try not to cry. I'm just so proud to be a member of this council. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Okay, I shall move on now with some sad news. The death of the former Lady Mayoress Nancy Cairns. Members will have been saddened to hear of the recent death of Mrs. Nancy Cairns, wife of former councillor and Lord Mayor David Cairns. Nancy was Lady Mayoress in 1989-1990, and she served the city with great dignity and dedication. The Lord Mayor and Leader have already written to the family, forwarding the council's sincere condolences. I've been notified that the following members wish to speak, and I will be calling them in this order. There is no need for these members to raise their hands. Councillors Duggins and Sorden. Councillor Duggins.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. And the first time I went to a Lord Mayor's inaugural dinner, it was David and Nancy Cairns, who were Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress, and John Smith actually addressed the audience that night. It was a fantastic night, and David and Nancy were a terrific couple. They did Coventry proud. They were always warm, always friendly, and always open. And not only was David somebody I got to know, really because of the fact that he was a member of Longford Labour Party, as was Nancy, although he was, of course, as you know, Deputy Lord Mayor, a councillor who distinguished Henley for many, many years. Nancy and David always made people welcome. I can remember where they actually lived in Dovedale Avenue, and there were a number of problems that residents had. And I've been on the council for a number of years at that point, and they got in touch with me and made their house available so that I could actually hold a surgery there. They were both very, very thoughtful, and I'm sure David will miss Nancy terribly, and we wish David and his family all the best in these exceptionally sad times.
Thank you, Councillor Duggins. Councillor Sorden.
Well, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. It was in 1972 that I first stood for the council in Henley Ward. You'll not be surprised that I didn't win, but the winner was David Cairns. So I suppose I've known Nancy for almost 50 years. And I simply want to echo George's comments. Nancy was a delightful lady, a great Lady Mayoress, a tremendous support of David and everything he did. And I think George is quite right. David will miss her so much because they were such a devoted couple. Yeah. And I'd just like to say that I enjoyed her company and wish my condolences to go to David and the family.
Thank you. Can I thank both parties for their very kind words? And I'm sure former Councillor Cairns will take them very much as they're offered. Right, item 4, petitions. I call on the Chief Executive to read out the petition from Councillor Jandu, who will have 2 minutes to present his petition. After the petition has been heard and presented, I will be seeking Council's agreement to refer it to the appropriate organisation. Councillor Jandu, beg your pardon, Chief Executive to read the petition.
Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. And as you say, it's our single petition council this afternoon. It is with Councillor Jandu. with a total of 14 signatures, and it relates to the saving of the Coventry Building Society branch in Coundon from closure. So it's with Councillor Jandu. Thank you.
Councillor Jandu, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, Happy New Year to you all. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We, the undersigned, petitioned the council to support residents by lobbying Coventry Building Society to reconsider their decision to close the Coundon branch. Closing the Coundon branch is like removing a very important part of the local service. We urge the bosses of Coventry Building Society to rethink the closure of the Coundon branch on Barker's Butt Lane. The Coundon site facility provides a lifeline for the local community. There are further 283 signatures related to this petition on change.org, which gives us a combined grand total of 297 signatures. We also ask these signatures to be accepted as part of the petition to Coventry City Council, who we look to for support. Can I ask the Cabinet Member of Business and Services to ask Coventry Building Society to revert their decision? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jandu.
Thank you.
Can members please unmute their microphones? Is it agreed to refer the petition to the outside organisation?
Aye.
That's carried. Could members please mute their microphones? Item 5, declarations of interest. I call on the monitoring officer to speak.
Are there any oral declarations? No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 6, question time. We have 2 written questions today. I will remind members that while supplementary questions are permitted, they should be focused. If I believe supplementary questions are irrelevant, frivolous, repetitive, or are substantially similar to a question already asked, I will move the business on. 6.1, written questions. The answer booklet has been circulated and is available to view online. Question 1 is submitted to the Cabinet Member for Policing and Equalities, Councillor A. Khan, by Councillor Andrews, and relates to Cabinet portfolio responsibility for parking enforcement. Are there any supplementary oral questions? I hear none.
Sorry, my hand is up, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Councillor Andrews, yes?
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Shall I go
Yes,
first?
please. Yes, go on then.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, this supplementary is to Councillor Abdul, and firstly to thank him for the answer, which has provided the clarity needed over where parking enforcement sits in respect of the Cabinet members. I don't want to go into all the detail, but I can't help reflect on the email we've all received as members of the City Council from a member of the public concerning the ongoing issue of parking tickets being issued in certain roads where there isn't adequate signage. And without wasting the time of the full council, Deputy Lord Mayor, I wonder if the Cabinet member might agree to meet with me, Councillor Heaven, as the shadow for City Services, and Councillor Heatherton, with senior council officers in the relevant departments to go through this issue in some detail, because at the moment I'm not assured sufficiently that there isn't a problem here that isn't currently being addressed by the City Council. Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, can I thank Councillor Andrews for his question, and I'm more than happy to arrange a meeting. I suspect it will be in the similar fashion that we're meeting today. I'm pretty sure Councillor Heatherton would agree to that, and officers will also be present, and we can hopefully answer any further questions Councillor Andrews may have and resolve any concerns he may have. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. This can wait until that meeting, to be fair, so I'll ask the question, but can the Deputy Leader at that meeting or now also confirm the dates during which enforcement of the entire city centre RPZ was suspended due to any missing entry signage at Warwick Road? And therefore, can he also further confirm that no PCMs were issued during this period? As I say, we can either have that in writing now or you pick it up at the meeting that you have later on.
Okay, well, I suggest we take up your suggestion and refer that to that meeting to be organised. I've got Councillor Heaven, I believe. I don't see it on my participants list, but I've been advised. Councillor Heaven.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. The supplementary question in relation to Councillor Andrews, at the time when the ticketings were issued in a period where the signage was missing in Warwick Road, does Councillor Conn knows how many tickets was issued, how many PCNs was issued in that period?
Okay, and again, I suggest we pick up Councillor May's suggestion and refer that to the meeting being organised, particularly as you are participating.
Okay, thank you. Just in case if he didn't, it was 1,735 tickets was issued in that period.
That's fine.
Just in case. All right, thank you. No further question.
Okay. The next question, question 2, submitted to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities, Councillor Welsh, by Councillor Williams, and relates to consultation on the Brenshill Green Conservation Area. Are there any supplementary oral questions? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Can I first of all thank the Cabinet Member for the detailed and helpful answer that he has provided. And he says that we have a new conservation area officer. It'd be even more helpful if he could tell me who this person is so that I can engage with them. But could he give a firm reassurance that not only will there be a proper consultation on the conservation area, but that a proper consultation and public meeting is also done before an outline application for 500 houses is submitted on land in this area? Now, this was promised to me about 2 years ago, and this week residents have seen men in orange high-vis jackets on this land, so we're a bit concerned. So please can he give those reassurances, because residents feel the council is using the lockdown to push through controversial planning applications. So can we just have that reassurance? Thank you.
Councillor Welsh.
Oh, thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry, I had a bit of trouble with my camera then. On the conservation area, you've had the commitment there to that. There will be the work taken out, and that's why it's going to take until the autumn to do it. And then residents will be consulted on that. So we'll follow that process, and I've given that commitment. In terms of planning, we've been through this with you, Councillor Williams, a number of times, and we will follow consultation as we're supposed to do it with every application. If you've got particular issues, then you don't need to leave it till full council to raise it with me. You can email me or the officers to seek what reassurances you need. Because if you leave it until full council, you've only got a few more council meetings left until you're no longer on the council. So I wonder how much more you're going to be able to achieve. So if it's really that serious and things going on, you need to have a little bit of dialogue with me. Leaving it until full council in public may, fulfill your need for being seen to be doing things, but actually you're just holding up the process. So that's what I'd give as advice to Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh. Councillor Williams, do you wish to come back, or are you content?
Yes, further supplementary. I shall be here a lot longer than you think, Councillor Welsh. Don't worry about that. And I thank him for his reply, and I will take his advice on emailing him. But can I just, based on that reply, ask him if he agrees with me that ward councillors should be given more than 1 week's notice if a major application in their ward is coming to the planning committee? That's all I've got left to say on that one. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Councillor Welsh.
Well, I can have a guess at what Councillor Williams is talking about, but I don't agree with what he said, because the application he's referring to was in existence for 2 years, and it went on for some time with I believe it was 3 rounds of consultation. And again, there's council officers there that he can contact and he can get information from. There is no big shock as to what is going on, and I've said that to other councillors too. If he's really serious about he takes his role seriously, he would engage with council officers instead of having to go at them on Twitter.
Okay, I've got Councillor Andrews indicating. Andrews? Is that historic?
I don't see a hand, Deputy Lord Mayor. My apologies if it's there, but it's not up on my screen.
Okay, so it was. Thank you very much. I had no others then, so moving on. All questions to chairs of scrutiny boards, chair of scrutiny coordination committee. Are there any questions? I see none. Councillor Williams, could you put your hand down, please? Item 6.3. But the point, Councillor Lepoidovan, it's not coming up on my screen.
Ah, right, okay. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Lepoidovan, I beg your pardon. Go on.
Okay. My question is Belinda Bickham, Chair of Scrutiny Board 4. Bin collection problems in the weeks after Christmas now seem to be an annual occurrence. Will the Chair of Scrutiny Board 4 be looking at our most recent experience to see what lessons can be learned for the future?
Councillor Bigham.
Sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor, I missed the first part of that question.
Okay.
I'll repeat.
Yes, please.
The bin collection problems in the weeks after Christmas now seem to be an annual occurrence. Will the Chair of Scrutiny Board 4 be looking at our most recent experience to see what lessons can be learned for the future?
Indeed, I will, Councillor Poidevin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. As a member of Scrutiny Board, I would look forward to that myself. Councillor Williams, your hand is still up. Do you have a question?
Forgive me, Deputy Lord Mayor, I don't think my hand is up. But...
Well, it was. There's some delay with my computer then. My apologies. Okay. Oral questions to chairs of other meetings. I see none. 6.4, oral questions to representatives on outside bodies. I see none. 6.5, oral questions to Cabinet members and Deputy Cabinet members on any matters relating to that member's portfolio. I see, yes, thank you very much. I've been notified of questions from the following members. Councillors Lepoidovan and Williams. Julia.
Right. Okay. My two questions are for the Cabinet member for City Services, Patricia Heatherton. The Cabinet member must be aware of the number of complaints over the bins this Christmas. We both live in the Woodlands ward, and I, like many other councillors, received numerous complaints about the service this year. Clearly, communication was poor, with bags left out many days. Would she agree with a senior member of her party that this year's service was shambolic?
Councillor Heatherton.
Actually, I think the evidence is different to that, Councillor Lepoidovan, in so much that the actual bin collections, bearing in mind that we did have, problems with COVID down at the Whitley depot, bin collections were okay. What has been the problem was the bags, and clearly, in some areas that has been absolutely, it's worked just as we'd hoped. And in other pockets of the city, there's been problems in the collection of those. So we have, there is a story behind this, and I won't go into it now, but clearly, we have been really, really challenged by problems with COVID and the stuff that we have. Most people have been very understanding once we said. I think it's just to say that we're not able to put an extra person in to deal with the bags at the same time as the bin because of COVID. We have to ensure the safety of our staff. Most people have understood that, and I've had emails to that effect. So where there have been problems, of course, we will investigate and we'll look to see. But to say that there was a problem with the bin collections probably is not is not the way forward. The problem's been with the extra collections. So, but I will look at it as a whole. Of course I will. And you know that, for the first time this year, I was getting compliments from people saying actually that had gone well. But of course, if you're in the area where the clear bags haven't been collected and they're on the streets, we understand why you would be complaining, but we will look at it as a whole.
Right. Thank you for that response. And, I did refer to the bags. That was the big problem that I was picking up a lot on. My additional question to you is, in Warwick, I believe the only days that collections do not take place are Sundays and Christmas Day. This appears to be an efficient and effective service. So would the Cabinet member agree to look at how Warwick District Council deliver their waste services and to see if we can find ways to improve in future for Christmas collections?
I think there is a discussion to be had at a much higher level about this, the whole Christmas period time out, to be quite honest, Councillor Lapodovin. And I think that when that decision was made some time ago, clearly what we're seeing now is the way that society has changed, our needs have changed, and it's responding to that. So yes, those discussions I'm sure will take place because clearly we have mentioned them, and it's just a matter now of how we take these things forward, involving the right people and seeing what we can do to meet the demands that we get these days, which is almost like a 24-hour service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very positive response there, Councillor Boyderman. Councillor Mayer.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. This is a question for the Leader of the Council. Matt Hancock voiced for the first time that after 13.8 million of the most vulnerable have been vaccinated, the UK will need to have a national debate about who should then be prioritised. Does the Leader of the Council support the Coventry South MP Zara Sultana in her view that prisoners should be prioritised, or does he think key workers should be the priority? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Duggins.
Lord Mayor, I've got a leader statement to make, and that will be clear as a result of that statement.
We'll refer that question to that statement then.
Perfect. Thank you.
However, though, it doesn't give Councillor Mayer the opportunity to respond. Are you content, Councillor Mayer?
Lord Mayor, no, I'm more than happy to have it in the statement.
Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mayton, your hand went up and came down apparently. I can't tell because my screen didn't pick you up at all. Do you wish to ask a question?
No, it's still down.
Okay. Councillor Williams, my apologies. You should have been called earlier. Councillor Williams.
That's fine, Deputy Lord Mayor. I just have a very quick question for the Deputy Leader in regard to his position as Cabinet Member for Policing and Equalities. Now, it relates to the Police and Crime Commission, who recently advertised for a post of the Assistant Director of Fairness and Belonging on £74,000 a year. I'm thinking of applying for it, actually. Whilst I appreciate the Deputy Leader isn't responsible for that, could I ask his opinion on whether he thinks this is an appropriate use of public money, or would he prefer it spent on officers on the ground?
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I mean, the position is straightforward. It doesn't relate in any way to the council or the work we do in the council. Of course, we all want more money to be spent on police officers. I don't know the exact rationale behind the appointment, but I'm sure the current Police and Crime Commissioner and his staff were assured that the appointment was necessary, and the amount that the person is being paid, I'm sure, would have been benchmarked and would have been deemed the appropriate salary for the post. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams, you wish to come back?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We have to assume from that he's totally in favour of it. So what would he say then to victims in Coventry of crime, whether it's violent crime or whatever, that he would prefer to see money spent on that sort of position than officers on the ground. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Khan.
Well, I think the premise that I've agreed with the appointment and the necessity for it is flawed. I didn't say that. What I've said is that that was a matter for the Police and Crime Commissioner. And as I said, I'm sure that before making the appointment, he and his colleagues were satisfied that it was necessary. You know, and of course, anybody who's a victim of crime, every councillor in the chamber today would sympathise and would want their issues to be dealt with. So any resource from any place, we would welcome that. I'm not sure that the money that the Police and Crime Commissioner spent on the appointment could have been used for the purpose to which Councillor Williams refers to, because it's probably not in the same funding stream. But having said that, you know, I don't have a view on the appointment because I don't know exactly what the reasons were for the appointment and what was considered before the appointment was made. But we do 100% want more money to help victims of crime in Coventry and all throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. The final question then is Councillor Heaven.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So my question, hand was raised at the time when Councillor Poydon was mentioning about the bins. My question is to Councillor Heatherton. I appreciate and I acknowledge the fact that there was a problem with the clear bags, recycling bags, but the only thing has been noted now, due to that, there has been extra litter from the recycling bags been spreading in some streets, quite a lot of areas. I was wondering if it's possible to, while the recycling bags being cleared, that there be somebody actually taking note of other rubbish because of the wind that has been there, or could be because of the foxes, for so many reasons, but the bags are being opening and the rubbish has been spreading into the streets. So we've got a bigger problem now because our city doesn't look very clean at all. And I wonder whether we could recruit somebody to clean the extra litter in these streets.
Thank you, Councillor Heaven.
Thank you.
Councillor Heatherton.
No, we have the street pride teams out, Councillor Heaven. That they, once we are aware of the problems, we are sending them to pick up where the rubbish is spilled out. So we don't need to recruit. Believe me, we have teams that will do that as soon as we become aware. And as I say, I do ask for people's understanding right now. I think at times, we forget that we're still managing to provide a service at a time when we're really stretched with the COVID really affecting things. So just to ask for people to be patient, to make sure we're informed about where those problems are. We will get the street pride team out there, and we will hopefully move on from the problems we're experiencing at the moment with the COVID sort of situation. So please bear with us, but we are sort of clearing up as we go along.
Thank you, Councillor Heatherton. Could you send Councillor Heaven the contact details for the street pride team? That would be helpful.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then. Statements by the leader. I invite Councillor Duggins to make his statement.
Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor, thank you very much. Can I begin by outlining to council colleagues that as a council we continue to work at a regional level with all Met leaders as we try to address the issue around the COVID pandemic and some of the related challenges that will arise on the eventual lifting of lockdown and restrictions. At the same time, Coventry is part of a beacon arrangement with Solihull and Warwickshire, and we continue our full participation in that arrangement, as well as our own outbreak test and trace meetings, which meet once every 2 weeks. Colleagues, I think it is fair to say that there are always a number of issues which arise, and we try to ensure that we make our views known. Recently, as a result of representation to government from Met leaders, there has been a focus on supermarkets and COVID adherence. What we have asked for is that wearing of face coverings be implemented in a much more consistent way in supermarkets. And in particular, we are very keen to ensure that supermarkets reintroduce the one-way systems that were so successful in the first lockdown. I think all of us agree that supermarkets and their staff have played a key role in keeping the country going, but we do want to ensure that every step is taken to reduce as far as we can the transmission of COVID, and that challenge became doubly significant due to the new variant whose potency became more apparent around mid-December. Met leaders did meet with Matt Hancock as anticipated on the 11th of December to talk about which tiers Coventry, Warwickshire, Solihull, Birmingham and the Black Country would be going into at the time of the meeting on the 16th of December. But of course, all of this was overtaken by the advent of the new strain of COVID, which meant that the transmission was between 50 and 70% higher, and clearly the issue of tiering at that point became irrelevant as we moved towards lockdown. One of the challenges that has continually been discussed is around the issue of messaging. And I think that we need to get that right, Deputy Lord Mayor, especially as we are now experiencing the impact of the new variant. Although Coventry rates were near 600 per 100,000, they are now falling and we continue to register below the national average. However, the majority of the population in Coventry are adhering to the rules as they stand, but the rules have changed 64 times according to human rights lawyer Adam Wagner. And so I believe that and suggest that our approach to messaging has been consistent and right, and those messages are very simple, that people should wash their hands for at least 20 seconds, socially distance of at least 2 meters, and wear face coverings. Colleagues, we all know how difficult the issue of messaging is, and yet how important it is. Ministers have struggled to articulate government rules effectively. The rules now amount to about 50,000 words, and it is no wonder that we have the absurd situation in which 2 walkers were initially fined as a result of their exercise programme. It became clear to me the difficulty in articulating how these rules were supposed to be adopted. Kip Malthouse, the police minister, when asked whether 7 miles was local, said, "It depends on where you are." There will need to be, however, in further weeks to come, consistent messaging around the vaccination programme. I was pleased that the Imams up and down the country outlined their support for the vaccination programme. Whilst when I spoke to Liz Galton, our Director of Public Health last week, about how the council could get involved in this programme, she basically said that it was essential that the NHS would be driving this particular programme, but we could help and would help by reaching all of our communities in the city. And I know she has held virtual meetings in Folesel and across the city to get across the communities the importance of taking up offers around the vaccination programmes. And in respect to taking up offers, I know that there are people across the city who have been offered the opportunity to go for vaccinations in places far afield as Bristol and Manchester. But I do want to reassure constituents that their doctor will be in touch with them, so they do not need to take that particular offer up. What I would say is that I strongly support the take-up of the vaccination to all who are offered the vaccination, and I would remind colleagues and members of the public that our life expectancy would be far lower without the availability of a whole variety of vaccines over a number of years. Vaccines, along with civil engineering advances, other medical advances, have contributed to the increase in life expectancy and quality of life that we enjoy today. Deputy Lord Mayor, I now wish to move on to the issue that I think is the central one at the moment and will become more and more important, and that is the vaccination programme. At the beginning of the year, I was interviewed by Coventry Live and asked about the vaccination programme. I outlined my support for the vaccination programme and for the need for the public to be updated on its progress. That meant that along with the daily figures we are familiar with about the number of people who have been tested positive and unfortunately those who have died within 28 days of testing positive for COVID, that we also have the figures for those who have taken part in the vaccination programme. This so the public can measure the success of this programme. In my view, the government are effectively aiming for over 50s and the 4 priority groups to be vaccinated by the middle of March. And after that, all adults to be vaccinated by the autumn. I think it is important that this programme is escalated to speed up to ensure that all adults are vaccinated as soon as possible. Obviously, the priority groups still come first, but all adults are vaccinated as soon as possible, safely, of course, and that is predicated on the manufacture and quality control of the vaccine and the ability to deliver that into people's eyeball, that being the over 50s and those in the vulnerable categories, the death rates reduce significantly to between 88 and 99%. The benefits are clear. If this programme is carried out at speed, effectively and efficiently, we take the massive pressure off our hospitals and those ICT units, as well as reducing the number of those who have so tragically died. And to bring this into full focus, it's now become accepted that more people have lost their lives to COVID than in the Blitz during the Second World War. So this is something that I hope the whole chamber can agree on, that we must encourage the government to ensure the programme delivers a blow to COVID as quickly as possible. I'm sure, Lord Mayor, that everybody in the chamber appreciates the amazing work that will be going in to deliver this vaccine programme across the country, whether it be NHS staff who will be involved, whether it will be GP surgeries, whether it will be local pharmacies, whether it will be the army involved with the transportation, or those getting involved in the medical process, and indeed all the locations. My ask, though, is that the unnecessary red tape be dispensed with to ensure that we can ramp up that capacity as soon as possible. At the same time, Councillor Mayton and myself have written to Matt Hancock outlining this council's belief that all school staff should be offered the COVID vaccination and added to the priority groupings. Clearly, we can begin to feel that there is light at the end of the tunnel, because there will be a third vaccination available from April to go along with the Oxford and Pfizer vaccines. Deputy Lord Mayor, I now wish to turn to the issue of test, trace, track, isolate and support. Colleagues, this at the moment is not at the top of the agenda, but it certainly should be. I was reading, and I'm sure many have read the article by George Monbiot, Guardian columnist, who actually reaffirmed the importance of effective test and support system in order that we are able to move out of the cycle that we have been in for the last 10 months of lockdown restrictions, lifting restrictions. And he suggested that if you get the system right, you can free the nation from both uncontrolled diseases and lockdown. In his article, he pointed out there is a lesson to be learnt from Taiwan, a country with twice our population density, who have lost just 7 people from COVID without locking down. And he pointed out they had developed a system with the help of participatory democracy, ensuring that there was a high level of consent and engagement with professionals in charge at every stage, with generous support and contact with people who had to isolate.
Do you have much more, Councillor Duggins?
Extensions have been moved, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes, I know.
Thing.
They may not be necessary, though, Councillor.
Well, they will be necessary,
okay.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Extension, agreed.
Colleagues, tomorrow we'll see the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. and the inauguration will be played out against the background in which the election result was simply refused to be accepted by the current President of the United States, which led to scenes at the Capitol 2 weeks ago, which were nothing more than an attempt to overthrow a democratic election and overthrow democracy itself. It was a shameful episode for the United States, but their democracy withstood the onslaught. Colleagues, the arguments were ludicrous. There was no great voter fraud. People may point out the defeated incumbent got 76 million votes, but the triumphant candidate, Councillor Biden, got 83 million votes, 7 million more, and this is democracy. And this is what happens in a democracy, Deputy Lord Mayor. And whilst we are being brutally honest, the incumbent president did not win the popular vote in 2016, did not win the popular vote in 2020, and did not win the popular vote in the midterm elections. So colleagues, I'll leave you with the thought that democracy is a very fragile flower. But in this instance, it survived. And I do hope over the next 4 years, America can be brought together again, and that it moves away from the kind of populism, fake news, downright lies that it has been its lot in the last 4 years. All of us as politicians have a duty, no matter who we are, that we do not incite and inflame our supporters, no matter what the issues are. Lord Mayor, I want to move on to 2 announcements that I have this afternoon. It has been clear to me that our entire workforce has gone over and above at all levels across all services right from the beginning of this pandemic, and will continue to do so. In the acknowledgement of this, I'm announcing today that I want each and every employee to be given an additional day's leave as a thank you for all that they have done in response to COVID and all that they will continue to do. And I have asked the Chief Executive to ensure that this be implemented. Secondly, Deputy Lord Mayor, in recognition of the incredible work that NHS colleagues have done across the city to combat this dreadful pandemic, it is my intention to show our appreciation by recommending to Council this afternoon that the University Hospital Coventry and Warwickshire, UHCW, be given the freedom of the entry to our great city. I would like Council to consider this recommendation at a future meeting when we would all be able to welcome representatives from UCHW to our chamber, so that we can fully show our appreciation and celebrate their incredible service to our city. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Ridley, you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Can I thank the Leader as ever for early sight of his draft. As usual, I won't comment on every point he's made, but there are 1 or 2 remarks I would like to make in return. The Leader pointed out to me the other day in a conversation that it was around 12 months ago that we both started receiving briefings on the coronavirus. Who knew at that stage that this virus, this distant virus in a faraway land, would have such an impact on our everyday lives? Last night, I stumbled across some photos from a shopping trip I did just before the lockdown started. It did bring back a few memories, actually. The empty shelves, the queues, and the products that had been damaged as if by a swarm of locusts. The panic buying we saw was a testament to the madness which engulfed the country as the pandemic approached. Who would have believed at that time that the country would come together in the way that it did? Who would have believed that we would have had Clap for Carers or Captain Tom as our new national hero? And who would have thought that "you're on mute" would become our daily refrain? But that it did, as people everywhere stepped up and adjusted to defeat this common enemy, and I salute them. In his comments, Councillor Duggins drew a parallel with the Blitz. Although we are not facing a tangible enemy, we are fighting an invisible enemy with no regard for the conventions of warfare. However, the cavalry is in sight and we have a new weapon in our arsenal. The vaccination will allow us to fight back and protect those most at risk. It will enable us to move forward to a position where we can begin to manage this dreadful disease. So to continue a theme and to paraphrase our wartime leader, The vaccination does not mean the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. But be under no illusion, colleagues, we're not there yet. It is vital that people continue to adhere to social distancing measures and obey the restrictions that are in place. Wearing a mask is not pleasant. Going without seeing your family is not pleasant. But we all have a duty of care to each other to stay home and save lives. In some respects, the disease has redrawn the social contract between government and the people. Basic freedoms and liberties, which we have taken for granted, have vanished. In exchange, it is expected that the government will look after us, treat us fairly, and provide clear and accurate information. Deputy Lord Mayor, I believe that the government has got most of the big decisions right in this pandemic, but I also agree that at times communication has not been adequate. A testament to this is the chasm that exists between the restrictions that are imposed by law and the guidance issued by ministers. We have recently seen police forces conflating the two and erroneously penalising people who have broken no laws. This was epitomised by Derbyshire Police, who were forced to rescind 2 high-profile fines because the recipients hadn't broken the law. Their actions were heavy-handed and the whole incident became a massive distraction to what was important. Make no mistake, rule breakers are endangering others, and it is right that binding restrictions are enforced. But we have a model of policing by consent in this country, and we can't enforce our way out of this situation if the people are not with us. So we need to win hearts and minds by explaining and by encouraging. I don't know about colleagues, but when I see images of hospitals being overwhelmed, of hard-working staff crying and families weeping, it stiffens my resolve to beat this virus, more so than the threat of a metaphorical stick. We could also be better at giving people the hope that the sunlit uplands will eventually return. The shepherd will tend his sheep and the valley will bloom again, as Dame Vera Lynn once sung. And there is a lot to be optimistic about, especially in Coventry. We will rebuild, just as we have done before, but we will do so with record levels of investment from the government. We will do so as the city of culture, and we will be the envy of many of our peers. As we start to think about that recovery and the transition from lockdown, we will need to be on top of our game. There was much consternation before Christmas when Coventry was put into Tier 3, even though the data did not justify that. Looking ahead, it is inconceivable that we will go from a national lockdown direct to normality. So we will need to make sure that Coventry is treated fairly based on the available evidence and not as part of some greater Birmingham area. Finally, I would have thought it was slightly outside of our remit to comment on the US election, but perhaps George always wanted to start a speech with the phrase, "My fellow Americans." But as he has raised it, I would like to put on record my personal delight at the outcome. 4 years ago, Alan Andrews and I sat up all night watching Trump win. It was a desperate affair, and the hope then was that he would mellow in office. That did not happen, and it now falls to President-elect Joe Biden to lead our friends and allies into a new age of peace and reconciliation. And on that note, Deputy Lord Mayor, President Biden will visit the UK this summer, and I do wonder whether some attempt should be made to invite him to the UK City of Peace and Reconciliation. I'm sure there is much to be gained for all concerned, and it would make a big statement that global Coventry is back on the world stage.
Councillor Duggins, do you wish to respond?
No, I don't wish to respond. I don't think there's very much that divides us there, and very clear. I think that when there is a new president in America, I think it is incumbent upon, if we have a council meeting, to make commentary on that, but especially in the circumstances that the inauguration is going to take place. I'd certainly sort of welcome the idea of welcoming President Biden to Coventry. I think that would be a fantastic idea. And let's hope that when he does come, that some of the restrictions will be relaxed. What I don't disagree with Gary is around how we come out. I think we need to come out of lockdown at a time when the vaccinations clearly are working the way that I suggested, and that we can reduce the death rates significantly, if not down to zero, because I frankly don't believe that talk of tiers will be satisfactory. I think tiers have pitted one community against another, and I think as far as the next few weeks and possibly next few months are concerned, we should actually fight this as one nation. Well, we should fight it really as the 4 nations if we can, with very similar kind of restrictions. Restrictions may actually change, may relax, but I certainly don't believe we should return to the tier system, because frankly, colleagues, the tier system didn't work. The tier system effectively ended up with lockdown 1, lockdown 2, and then lockdown 3. But I thank Gary, as always, for the way that he's responded.
Thank you, Councillor Duggins. Can I remind colleagues there is no provision in the Constitution for comment from the Chamber? I move on to item 7.2, statement by the Cabinet Member for Children's Services. I invite Councillor Seaman to make her statement.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'll take the opportunity now to provide you all with the latest on the progress we're making and challenges we're facing as we work to improve children's services in Coventry. I've met regularly with the Director of Children's Services and our Children's Services Senior Leadership Team to set out a clear direction for children's services. I'm pleased to be able to share with you today the progress reported to the Children's Services Continuous Improvement Executive Group on the 9th of December 2020. And as ever, I'll strive to be honest and detailed in what I tell you today. I know this continues to be a challenging time for all. Children's Services has continued to maintain core service delivery, delivering ongoing protection, support, and intervention to vulnerable families across Coventry during the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring the services continues to meet statutory duties to protect children. All buildings have remained open. Services continue to operate during the national lockdown period. Risk assessments are regularly updated to reflect government guidance and include additional measures to control the new variant. All 8 family hubs remain open and offer a here to help function. Staffing in the area teams and family hubs are staffed by bubble teams and kept to a minimum at all times. Services have reverted to more visual visits again. This is when it is safe to do so. Children's homes continue to operate and Broad Park remains open, offering short breaks for children with disabilities within the parameters of risk assessment. Staff who can work effectively from home continue to be based at home. The service continues to be under pressure with the increased numbers of children in need work, increased numbers of children protection work, and looked after children numbers increasing. Caseloads are higher than average, and recruiting experienced social workers vacancies remains a significant challenge. The COVID-19 pandemic is having significant impact on recruitment and is making it difficult to recruit experienced social workers during this period. It has led to an increased use of agency staff and increased financial impact. The service has also experienced difficulty in recruiting agency social workers due to insufficient experienced social workers in the region. A shortage of social workers has led to higher caseloads and higher demand of work across all services and teams in children's services. A new campaign to recruit a further 12 newly qualified social workers, cohort 7, will commence on the 25th of January 2021. This is an additional cohort to address further the number of social worker vacancies within the service. A further social work academy team manager to double the cohort of newly qualified social workers will also be established and recruited too. Children's Services continue to work the recruitment team and Human Resources colleagues to review further targeted campaigns and innovative ways to recruit and retain experienced social workers. A presentation from corporate colleagues to support the work required on driving the workforce forward was presented by the Director of Human Resources at the Continuous Improvement Executive Group on the 9th of December and is being taken forward. Now on to our performance. The Performance Board continues to meet monthly to review critical performance indicators. There continues to be an increase in performance activity with an increase in the number of contacts and referrals as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Senior managers continue robustly to challenge performance and undertake samples to understand the reasons why activity is increasing. The Performance Board feeds into the Continuous Improvement Executive Group on progress to provide oversight and accelerate at a pace areas for development that need to be improved on over the next 12 months. I'm also pleased to inform you of an exciting new project that Children's Services are involved in and will be implementing with Leeds. Family Valued was a Leeds City Council system change programme designed to spread restorative practice across children's services. A key element is the expansion of the family group conferencing service to a scale not previously seen in the UK, including for families experiencing domestic violence. The Leeds Family Value approach reflects the Coventry way, where children are at the centre of practice. This reflects the values of the Leeds model, which places families in control and enables them to reduce dependencies on specialist services, develops resilience and capacity, and takes the lead in decision making and ownership of their plan. A joint plan has been submitted to the Department for Education for funding approval to support the programme on the 11th of December. And once funding has been approved, the programme will be implemented from April 21, subject to political approval. This is an exciting opportunity for Coventry to develop relationship-based practice and to expand the family group conferencing service and undertake reunification projects and promote further the work on connected persons, foster carers and special guardianship orders. I'm also pleased to report the good progress is being made on the continuous improvement plan. The completion of actions in the plan will be signed off by the board on the 10th of February. Members will recall in October, I briefed you on the proposal to put forward the Continuous Improvement Executive Group's members to consider the recommendation to transfer the oversight for the continuous improvement to the Coventry Safeguarding Children's Partnership from the 1st of April. I acknowledge that this is a timely and sensible transferal. Members of the group unanimously approved and accepted the recommendation. As a result of COVID-19, Ofsted inspections were paused and consequently Children's Services have not been re-inspected and will now receive an interim focus visit, an assurance visit prior to the full standard inspection. And as part of the new governance arrangements, I will continue to work with the Children's Services leadership team to drive forward practice improvement and service changes in our journey to getting to good, and will continue to provide updates to the Council on progress quarterly. I will also continue to support our great frontline staff to carry on this excellent work that they're doing, and I know everyone in the Council chamber today will do the same for the benefit of our city's children. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Seaman. Excellent timing. Right, I beg your pardon. Councillor Le Poidouin to respond to the statement.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet member for letting me see her statement yesterday. I haven't really got a lot to say today, only that I am really pleased to see us working with the Leeds Family Valued Project. Leeds has been a significant leader in this area, so this will be good for the city. I also would like to thank all our staff for their hard work during these difficult times and the pressure that they are under. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Lee and his team for the award that he has got. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor de Boyleman. Do you wish to exercise your right of reply, Councillor Seaman?
No, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Moving on to item 8, debates. The first debate relates to changes to universal credit and will be moved by Councillor Innes and seconded by Councillor Khan. I invite Councillor Innes to move the debate as set out on the Council agenda.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Colleagues will be aware of yesterday's Opposition Day debate, which was also dedicated to this crucial issue, the need to protect the £20 uplift to universal credit. Colleagues, as I open, I ask that you cast your minds back to March 2020, when it would have been unthinkable to have gone to a supermarket wearing a face mask, or for the lion's share of our nation's children to be being schooled on the kitchen table. As the pandemic hit, and to its credit, the government gave this promise to the British people, that it would put its arms around everyone at this time of crisis. Part of the Chancellor's package of pandemic support was the so-called uplift of £20 a week to each universal credit payment. As colleagues are aware, universal credit is the benefit paid to the poorest in Britain. Some of them are in work and some of them are out of work, and it's paid to around 6 million people. It will surprise no one to hear that universal credit does not allow recipients to live the life of luxury. Nothing like. In fact, as the motion in front of you sets out, at its basic level prior to March 2020, just £73 a week was paid to single people, aged under 25 and out of work. This equates to just £3,800 each year, and recipients would need more than twice that sum to live above the absolute poverty line. Less than half the income required to even pass the absolute poverty line. Is it any wonder that, even before the pandemic hit, we were seeing a crisis in rough sleeping and a spike in people suffering mental health problems? I first became interested in politics as a teenager in the 1980s, when one of the cornerstones of political debates was the notion of trickle-down economics. The idea was that if through lower taxation more wealth remained in the hands of the wealthy, their spending would eventually find its way through the economy out and into the hands of the poor. 30 years on, it's clear that this theory didn't work. What actually happened is the rich sent their wealth offshore to places like the Cayman Islands, where they don't pay or pay very little tax. Wealth doesn't trickle down, as we see with the growth of the billionaire. Wealth is hoarded. In fact, it has been proven that the poorest are more likely to boost the economy by their spending than are the rich. For money finding its way into the hands of the poorest is spent on food and clothing and other basic necessities, and this spending is made locally. £20 a week may not sound a lot to many of the people listening, but that's over £1,000 in the course of a year. And in the case of Coventry's local economy, this means well over £28 million to local shops and businesses. Colleagues, after the year they have had, Coventry's shops and businesses cannot afford to have that £28 million clawed back by government. Colleagues, we know that we are the 6th richest nation on earth, a world beater if you like. Yet we have become a nation where celebrities have to campaign for food for our poorest children. The footballer Marcus Rashford is an inspiration to many, yet the truth is our children should not be going hungry. I admit I've never been a particular fan of Charles Dickens, but Oliver Twist with his bowl out and asking for more is once again an image for our times. How long before the hungry faces and rumbling tummies are also accompanied by bodies afflicted by rickets, caused by a lack of vitamin C, and scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin D and calcium? Colleagues, regardless of political party, food poverty should shame us all. Research by the esteemed Joseph Browntree Foundation reveals that a staggering 16 million people will be directly affected if the £20 uplift to universal credit comes to an end in March as planned. Nobody expected the British government to have a crystal ball, and the COVID pandemic has tested governments around the world. Yet I believe Britain need not have been hit by the worst recession of any major economy, or tragically, the worst death rate. Government has already conceded Britain may need lockdowns next winter too. It is clear that, even with the rollout of the vaccines, this pandemic has some time to run. The £20 uplift is needed permanently, but is essential until the pandemic comes to an end. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer called for government to return the £20 uplift and also to make public that decision now, as our poorest need certainty their incomes are protected to this level. Today, I hope that all councillor colleagues of both parties and none can back the call to protect the £20 uplift to universal credit. And the commitments are set out in this motion to write to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and to work with other local government organisations to make the £20 increase permanent. I look forward to hearing the debate. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Well done,
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Well timed. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Lord Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Jane Innes for brilliantly displaying why this proposal is very, very important in sending it to London to make sure that they hear our voices. I think, with colleagues, with a heavy heart, with a painful heart, I rise. I apologise. My internet connection is very poor. So I apologize if I drop out, and that's the reason I have not put the camera on. I think it's with a heavy heart because so many of us have continued to face hardship and pain, either through loss of life, loss of income, or even the loss of
Councillor Khan, you're breaking up.
Lifestyles. And I think this is really, really painful. And yeah, sorry, is that okay? I'll continue, and if it's too bad, then I'll have to just stop. I hoped, I wouldn't be presented with even the stress of something like this. And I just want to probably refer, because I think Councillor Innes is...
Councillor Khan, I'm sorry, but can you just formally second?
I think most really, important to the foundation. I'll formally second.
Okay, thank you very much. I've been notified that the following member wishes to speak. Councillor Lepoidevan, are there any other members who wish to take part in the debate? Councillor Lepoidevan.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. In bringing this motion to Council today, I have to ask, is the party opposite playing party politics? And wonder if this motion is designed to create real fear for our residents and those who are our most vulnerable. Colleagues, we all know in this chamber that no final decision has been made to reduce the additional £20 per week of universal credit. This has been guaranteed for a whole year. This government has delivered a comprehensive £280 billion response to the pandemic and has prioritised the most vulnerable in society. This government, a financially responsible government, is looking at the wider picture of all the financial measures that will be needed in future. In addition to the 63 million already given to councils this year, another £170 million has been given to councils for the COVID winter grant scheme. This is to ensure that families get the support they need and is part of the government's long-term plan to tackle poor health, hunger and education. 80% of these funds, ring-fenced, will be spent on food, energy and water bills. An extra £220 million has been given to extend the holiday activities and food programme. It has provided 1.3 million laptops and tablets for our most disadvantaged pupils. We have invested more than 400 million to support remote education. Coventry has received 1,302 additional laptops and tablets to support families. The government allocated £1 billion COVID catch-up plan to help schools support children who have fallen behind. This is as well as the £350 million as part of the National Tutoring Programme. Measures have been put in place to protect renters. Further support with council tax bills and additional funds have been provided for those who must self-isolate and who are on lower incomes. Evidence shows that this government has supported the poorest through this crisis. The motion before us today looks at only one aspect in isolation and does not take into consideration all the other support that I have spoken about. No firm decision has been made for universal credit. In light of the above, the Conservative group will be abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lepoidovan. I've got two indications to speak, Councillors Mayer and Lapser. Councillor Mayer.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. As Julia stated, I'll also be abstaining on the vote. At the start of the pandemic, the government boosted the Universal Credit Standard Allowance and Working Tax Credit by over £1,000 per year, and that was set over 12 months. And that was part of a £7.4 billion increase to welfare safety net, and it was given even more support. Now, this built on 1.7% increase in the value of the working age benefits that came into effect in April 2020. Now, only yesterday, the government also launched the National Free Schools Meal Voucher Scheme. Now, this is allowing schools to purchase e-gift cards for families to use at their choice of supermarkets, which is helping to support the most disadvantaged families. With schools having to close, I think people across both sides of the chamber understand it is vital that we ensure disadvantaged children can continue to receive a nutritious meal if they were used to receiving it at school. Now, this is just one example of the things the government is doing to make sure we support the both vulnerable. The government free school meal voucher scheme is worth £15 per week per child for all eligible families and is just the tip of the support iceberg. Now, over February half term, families will also receive support of the £170 million COVID winter food fund, just as they did over Christmas, ensuring that the most vulnerable in society are supported at this time. This is ensuring the most vulnerable in society have everything we can give them. Now, this administration claim they want to act constructively, but today, as at other council meetings, their use and tone of language is designed to mislead the people in Coventry and just cause more division. This debate has shown in reality they are more interested in point scoring than they are actually supporting those most in need. Now, the government approach throughout this pandemic has been to support the families, particularly those on low incomes, through a range of measures, and as Julia's highlighted earlier, are worth over 280 billion. Now, I won't go through all of them, but they do include things such as the furlough scheme, the 500 million hardship fund, the previously mentioned 170 million COVID winter grant scheme. We've extended the energy price cap until the end of the year, which is saving people up to another £100, and we've provided a 750 million package to support to ensure charities can continue their vital work during this pandemic, and a 7 billion increase to welfare. By contrast, and let's be honest, the ruling group, as with the Labour members of Parliament, what they'd really rather do is scrap universal credit altogether. This is a widely criticised plan which would cost the UK people 55 billion and plunge nearly 5 million people into poverty. The Conservative government has consistently stepped up to support low-income families and the most vulnerable in society throughout this pandemic, and will continue to do so despite the misinformation and the political point scoring attempted by the extremely left-wing administration. Lord Mayor, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mayor. I've Councillor Lapser.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. And first, can I thank Julia and Tim for covering so many of the valid points that I did have listed, so I won't be on as for my full time. This debate is a political stunt. No decision has been made, as Julia mentioned. The decisions are made at the time of the budget setting, so we all know that on the 3rd of March there will be a budget setting for the next steps going forward when we have more information regarding different financial restraints within the pandemic. Let's be honest here, and we know this for fact, Labour plans to scrap the universal credit. So you want to play politics, so you want to raise the amount and then scrap it altogether. The IFS criticised Labour plans to scrap universal credit, stating it's uncosted, unwise, expensive and unnecessary. Labour provide no details of what they would replace it with. No details, no costings. Councillor Innes mentioned the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. They've warned scrapping universal credit would cause huge upheaval. You plan to scrap universal credit would cause huge upheaval for millions of families when they really need stability. We know that the government is injecting billions into the welfare system. It's already boosted basic universal credit by £1,000 a year, as has been said. And we've also increased support with housing costs. More than 1 million houses have benefit, and we'll see an average increase of about £600 a year. The thing is, Lord Mayor, Labour shown once again that moans and groans that cannot even be bothered to put something together to replace something that they really want to scrap. So it is about Labour playing politics with people's lives. Let's be honest, they want to scrap universal credit, which has been put forward, but you have not got anything costed to put forward. It's much easier to shout loud and do nothing than to help, like this government is helping the most needy. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lapser. I've got 4 who have now indicated to speak. They are Councillors Abbott, Thomas, Duggins and Seaman. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I just want to pick up on some of the comments made by Conservative colleagues and just remind members of the Chamber that Conservative MPs recently abstained on the Labour amendment to keep the £20 addition to universal credit, which in my mind indicates that their government may well consider going through with scrapping it, despite the calls and the pressure and the evidence of the benefit that that additional money has for families across the country. We've heard that 1,302 laptops have been given out to some of our most disadvantaged families in the city, and this indeed is to be welcomed. But just a reminder, colleagues, there are over 11,000 children on free school meals in Coventry. And I'm not saying that not all of those children have access to a laptop or electronic equipment, but I would hazard a guess that there are more than 1,302 children in this city who don't have access to good quality broadband and don't have access to the proper IT equipment to undertake their online learning. This government are claiming to support the poorest families by refusing to continue to fund free school meals over the half-term holidays. They're supporting the poorest by potentially getting rid of this £20 addition to universal credit. They're supporting the poorest with the winter grant money into Coventry. That is about 1.7 million. 80% of that to be spent on support for food and fuel. If we were to assume that that went to families with children on free school meals, based on that number of 11,000, that's £123.63 per child, or £41.21 per month. That is nowhere near enough to cover the additional food and fuel bills that our families are experiencing during this lockdown. And we know from experience that there are hundreds of families out there that are choosing whether they eat or heat their homes. As colleagues will be aware, I'm chair of trustees at Feeding Coventry, and I know other colleagues are very heavily involved in the food support that's gone into the city over the past 12 months. We're very grateful to the support from the City Council for the funding that's gone into providing food for our most vulnerable across the city. But what I should add, to give an idea, Feeding Coventry alone in the last 12 months has spent over £500,000 on providing food support that has gone out directly to families in need in this city. That doesn't take into account a penny that have been spent by organisations like Langar Aid, that I know Councillor Lapser is very heavily involved in as well. The funding that's come into the government, into the city from the government, doesn't even scratch the surface on the level of need in this city. That funding, that £20 for those families, can make all the difference between them being able to afford to feed their children or not being able to afford to feed their children. This is not hysterics, Lord Mayor. This is not a political stunt. This is the reality that our families in this city who are dealing with being furloughed, being made redundant due to the pandemic. The government needs to back up its actions and properly fund the support these families so desperately need, Lord Mayor. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I wasn't initially going to speak in this debate, but I'm just so basically outraged by the ridiculous comments that have come from the other side of the chamber. And I just want to bring up some very brief points. I won't take the whole of my time. It's just to remind that the Conservative members opposite that, of course, Labour are supporting this debate. Of course, we're putting the debate forward. That is because, unless you need reminding, the Labour councillors in this city represent the most deprived areas of the city. So we are the ones that the public come to, as my colleague Councillor Abbott has just stated, in times of need and times of trouble, to support them. I'll give you some examples. I know of at least 2 families who are living within the deprived bracket. They've not received any laptops, and even if they had have done, they don't have internet and they can't afford it. And another family, the mother was on the phone to me in absolute floods of tears. She'd received the free meal parcel for her son. There was half a tomato, no animal protein, and a 35p packet of pasta had been split up, and the pasta had been put into a money bag that would normally hold coins. She was so disgusted and was unclear about the health and hygiene procedure that had been undertaken during the preparation of the parcel. She threw it in the bin. Now, just to remind the members opposite that the universal credit level as it is at the moment is currently less than half the level of absolute poverty. This is why members are supporting this debate, and I support it wholeheartedly. I just wish that the government's lame-handed attempts at supporting these people actually put more money in to actually do the job properly instead of doing half a job. So I support Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Seaman.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We've heard the opposition list a catalogue of initiatives that have been implemented by the government. And yet we see more child poverty, more in-work poverty, more children being admitted to hospital because of health needs, more demand for food banks, more people losing their employment through no fault of their own. So that £20 uplift can make all of that difference. What we're doing is not enough. We need to do more. And I fully support the motion to retain that uplift going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaman. The final speaker, Councillor Duggins.
Deputy Lord Mayor, in common with Christine and I think Pat, I wasn't going to speak, but I do want to make a few comments. Let me tell you one thing you can't abstain from. You can't abstain from poverty and you can't abstain from hunger. And I'm sure there are many families across this country who would actually like to be able to abstain from poverty and hunger. And the Conservative group, if they are to abstain, I'd be very interested to see what side of the debate they would come down on when push comes to shove. This is an honourable thing to do, colleagues, to actually write to the Chancellor in advance of the budget. It's what's part and parcel of it, to actually make the Chancellor aware of the views that people have. And you will see that we are recommending writing to Rishi Sunak about that and making it very clear that we support the extension. Colleagues, there's been talk about gimmicks. Let me just say to you that one of the issues being suggested, and I've seen this over the weekend, I'm sure that others have, is that Rishi Sunak would actually capitalise this by offering people one-off £500 or £1,000. And colleagues, the reason for that is they know that this is a potent political issue. And they know that there will be a lot of people, unfortunately, who will lose their jobs, who would actually need this extra £20, who would not get it. Let me say that, you know, that we are not trying to mislead people whatsoever. And, you know, as Faye has mentioned, many on this side and indeed on the side opposite have contributed to supporting the food banks and the various groups that have arisen to actually deal with the pandemic and the issues caused by that pandemic. So I'm not making a comment about that. The idea, colleagues, that you do not and you shouldn't effectively change universal credit because we don't agree with it is nonsense. All that we can do as a Labour Party, because we are not in government, is to support the £20. So at the moment, what we're trying to do is to ameliorate the position by advocating for the £20 extension to continue. And in time, of course, when we get a Labour government, then we will look at alternatives. But at the moment, that alternative is not there. So the argument that we shouldn't put this forward because we don't agree with universal credit really does not have much viability. And colleagues, can I also say an immediate suggestion that could be taken up is that people should not have to wait 5 weeks for universal credit in the first place. And that clearly should be made in a much more expedient way. Thank you, colleagues. That's me done.
Thank you, Councillor Duggins. Councillor Khan isn't the only one experiencing technical difficulties. I've actually seen Councillor Singh has indicated, but I'm also informed Councillor Ridley wishes to speak as well. Councillor Singh, Bally Singh.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to speak in support of my colleague, Councillor Innes, for a well-made speech. It's a measured motion, and I fully support the motion, backed by such a wonderful speech and some great comments made by my colleagues, which I won't repeat. I just wish the members opposite would show just as much passion as they are showing now in terms of opposing this debate motion, which is all it is asking for is that little bit of extra help for those that most need it in unprecedented times during the pandemic. They would show just as much passion as they're currently showing opposing this, and actually change tack and actually support and work with the people of this city. It's really disappointing. The passion they've showed opposing this motion is disappointing, and I would urge the leader of the members opposite to call off his attack dogs on this motion, call off his trolls, and actually support this motion and do the right thing and stick up for the people of this city rather than his paymasters in government. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Just to remind the Chamber, the opposition have indicated that they wish to abstain. Councillor Ridley.
Yeah.
Hello.
Can you hear me now, Deputy Lord
Yes.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Apologies for that, some technical problems. Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Like many others, I wasn't going to speak this afternoon. I think Julia Lepoidovan set out our position fairly well, so I'm not going to repeat a number of the things that she and other colleagues said. But I do have to repeat the charge, Deputy Lord Mayor, that what we've seen this afternoon is political grandstanding, and we've just seen that from Councillor Singh just a moment ago. He dedicated the entirety of his speech, from what I could hear, to attacking the Conservative group, almost on a personal basis about what we should and shouldn't do and paymasters and all the rest of it. And I can absolutely assure him and every other member of the Chamber that the Conservative group is very independent-minded and will quite often say what it thinks, even when we think the government is wrong. He also misrepresented the position of the Conservative group on a number of occasions by saying we're opposing the motion. I don't know if he's having dodgy internet problems, but we actually said that we're going to abstain, Councillor Singh, so maybe you need to listen to the debate a bit more. But I do think some of the other contributions from elected members have been absolutely ludicrous as well. If you do want to work with us, you know, you can't sort of tell us that you want to work with us and then attack us in the same sentence. You know, come and speak to us. You know, I've got no problem, and I've said on a number of occasions in this chamber, I'm happy to work with colleagues from across the aisles if it means we can get a better lot for the people of Coventry. Now, Councillor Lepoidovan, Councillor Lapsa, and others have set out very well why we are taking the position that we're taking today. So I just wanted to touch on a few of the things that people have said. I don't doubt the passion that Labour members have for improving the lives of children and everyone more generally. But I do resent the suggestion that only Labour members represent areas of the city that live in poverty. I represent Tile Hill. You know, other colleagues represent other parts of the city where there is poverty. So let's not take that attitude, shall we? You know, those people are just as deserving of help just because they've got a Conservative as if they had a Labour representative. I also think you need to look at some of those areas and look at why the majorities were so slim in the general election, because those people are deserting Labour in their droves. And part of the reason for that is because most people can see that we have had an unparalleled government intervention during this pandemic, unparalleled. The level of borrowing that we've got from the government, which every single one of us, by the way, is going to have to pay back at some point in time, is through the roof. It's beyond the wildest dreams of Jeremy Corbyn to see the level of state intervention that we've got now. So the idea that we are somehow as a government sitting back and just, you know, kicking up our heels and letting everyone get on with it is utterly ludicrous. And I really do resent that suggestion. And quite frankly, the comments from Councillor Innes at the start about how economic growth doesn't help the poor is a ludicrous suggestion. If she wants to bring Charles Dickens into it, my granddad, when he was a young boy, born in 1910, didn't have a toilet in the house. You know, we don't live like that today. And part of the reason for that is because we've had 100 years of economic growth and job creation. And it's the Conservatives that prioritise job creation. And that job creation leads to a boost in the economy, which leads to more taxes that we can spend on public services. And I'll just leave you with this one thought, Deputy Lord Mayor. Every single Labour government that there has ever been has left office with higher unemployment than it went into it. And that is because they cannot manage the economy. And I'm afraid that we've seen the effects of that 10 years ago. And if they ever get back into office again, we will see it again.
Thank you, Councillor Ridley. Councillor Khan, do you, is your connection back? Do you wish to exercise?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. I'll give it a go.
Go on then. Off you go.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I want to obviously fully support this motion. I think I've been slightly knocked off because there's been actually some key comments made by a number of our Conservative colleagues, and a couple of them are giving the impression now suddenly we're a nation of millionaires. We are not a nation of millionaires. We're still facing unprecedented problems and issues. And this is why we keep talking about poverty. And the reason why I think this debate is important, and I want to give a credit to all the colleagues who have supported this, and Councillor Jane Innes for starting this debate off. The most important reason is if we don't bring it to the attention of the government of the day, then how are we expecting them not to support something or actually accept that this £20 should stay? So it's our duty. We are duty bound to get this information to government, to say this is going to affect millions of people. And I've mentioned Joseph Rowntree Foundation, I've mentioned Bernardo's, the Child Poverty Action Group, who are urging, the government, because the reason they're urging the government, because they haven't said yes yet. Sometimes you're allowed to take the anxiety away from millions of people by saying, yes, we're definitely going to be doing that. I accept, obviously, on budget day, you make most of your proposals, but there's no harm when something is hurting as many people or causing great anxiety on this amount. It's going to clearly risk, plunging millions into poverty. And I think when this actually does get reduced, what you will find is, we've got over 50 food bank providers, children's charities, benefit and debt advisors, disability groups. They've all signed a letter saying that this is going to plunge the poorest into deeper poverty. And, sometimes you need to think what poverty is, and poverty, I'll just explain in case you're not sure, the most commonly used approach is relative income poverty. This basically means each household income is adjusted for family size, is compared to median income. Now, median, if somebody's not sure, is the middle income. That's half the people are more and half the people less, which is a fair assumption of doing, relative income poverty. This is going to be plunging probably 500,000 people plus into deeper poverty, which is mean that forget the poverty line, they're going into deeper poverty, which is another 50% below the poverty line. So this is the things that I'm urging, our colleagues, that we need to come together and support this, because we have to set our case forward to the government in advance and say, please support our communities, because of going, we don't want more than 500,000 going into deeper poverty. And if they did step forward and say, sorry, we're not going to be doing this in April, it's not going to affect the government in the slightest. It will just reassure our communities. So I'm just going to, because I know this has been quite a long-winded debate, I'm going to my final probably comments are just going to be that as we look to the future, these things, sometimes you can do them in advance, and it beggars belief, that our Tory government are, considering pushing more people into this poverty, and it's going to cut the income of over 6 million people. There's different figures elsewhere, and this is really going to be devastating cuts on top of public sector pay freeze, and it's going to hammer so many working families as well, not just people who are completely on benefits. It's working families that we want to protect as well. And just my final note is that I urge colleagues, even if you abstain, you're not supporting the motion, so it does give the impression you are against it. That's the impression it gives. Abstaining doesn't mean you're supporting it, so people can make their own judgment. So we urge you to come and stand with us and support us, because we just want the government to take this anxiety away, because April will be upon us within a matter of months. And just on one thing that probably hasn't been... My final line, sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor, final line is that, look, it's very important that we continue to recognise the cost of living. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is the final call for any other speaker. Councillor Innes, would you like to close the debate, please?
Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking colleagues for their contributions to this debate. Just a couple of corrections here. I was talking not about economic growth, Councillor Ridley. I was talking about trickle-down economics as a model for not working for the richest actually spread across the economy into the pockets of the people who need it most. Additionally, there was a lot mentioned about Labour's policies on universal credit. What I would say is Labour's not against, is obviously not looking to abolish payments to the poorest. What it's looking at is a way of actually doing this more effectively. And that will be the kind of policies that will be coming out from Sir Keir Starmer and Annalise Dobbs over the months and years ahead. We are unfortunately, I think, at least 3 years away from a general election. I'd also like to thank in particular Councillor Faye Abbott for her insights on Feeding Coventry and also for all the work that she does on that, and also Councillor Marcus Lapser for the works that he does on Langer Aid, because I know that both councillors actually make a really big difference to feeding some of the poorest in Coventry. Councillor Thomas's story about the local resident was really, I felt, very apt and illuminating really of the kind of struggles that are going on in families around our city. Councillor Cameron Khan, again, really emphasising those points about the poverty line and actually how poor some of the poorest really are. This is not just about having to go without a Sky subscription. This is, these are people who are having to really decide whether, what and if indeed they can afford to eat. And Councillor George Doug bringing really the debate back to what it's all about, which is about writing to the Chancellor and to the Prime Minister to actually campaign for this £20 payment to actually be retained, because as we know, unfortunately this pandemic is going to go on for some time, and it's £20 to some of our poorest people and poorest families. It's £28 million as well over the course of a year to the Coventry local economy, to our shops and to our businesses, and they need that money too. I think I'll finish there and just once again thank colleagues for their comments and also commend the motion to councillors, and once again emphasise that the resolutions that we'll be writing to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to ask them to retain this money and also work with other local government organisations to ensure that they do. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Innes. Clearly there isn't consensus on this matter, so we will go straight to a vote by name.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillors are asked to vote on the debate at 8.1 and they're asked to indicate for, against or abstain. Councillor Abbott.
For.
Councillor N. Akhtar.
For.
Councillor P. Akhtar.
For.
Councillor M. Ali.
For.
Councillor R. Ali.
For.
Councillor Andrews.
Abstain.
Councillor Orlock.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
Abstain.
Councillor Bigham.
For.
Councillor Birdie.
Abstain.
Councillor Blundell.
Abstain.
Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown indicated he had to leave the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
For.
Councillor Clifford. Councillor Duggins.
For.
Councillor Gittins.
For.
Councillor Harvard.
For.
Councillor Hare. Councillor Hare. Move on. Councillor Heaven.
Abstain.
Councillor Hare, for.
Thank you. Councillor Heatherton.
For.
Councillor Innes.
For.
Councillor Jandu.
Abstain.
Councillor Kaur. Councillor Kaur. Move on. Councillor A. Khan.
For.
Councillor T. Khan. Councillor T. Khan. I'll move on. Councillor Lacker.
4.
Councillor Lancaster. 4. Councillor Lapsar.
Abstain.
Councillor Podovin.
Abstain.
Councillor Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Mayle.
Abstain.
Councillor Mayton.
4.
Councillor Mayer.
Abstain.
Councillor Mix.
4.
Councillor M. Mutton.
4.
Councillor O'Boyle.
4.
Councillor Ridley.
Abstain.
Councillor Ruwan.
4.
Councillor Sandhu.
4.
Councillor Sorden.
Abstain.
Councillor Seaman. Councillor Seaman.
4.
Councillor B. Singh.
4.
Councillor R. Singh.
4.
Councillor Skinner.
Abstain.
Councillor Thay. Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
4.
Councillor Walsh.
4.
Councillor Welsh.
4.
Councillor Williams.
Against.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
4.
I have 33 for, 1 against and 13 abstain.
Okay, could colleagues mute their microphones, please? That's clearly carried. We move on now to the second debate, which relates to the post-Brexit deal with the EU, and will be moved by Councillor Jay Blundell and seconded by Councillor Heaven. Councillor Blundell.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and welcome to the Chair. The 30th of December marks a very significant day in our history. That was the day the Prime Minister, against a lot of people's expectations, secured a trade deal with the EU. Leaving the EU frees us from their laws and the European Court of Justice. Well, what about the agreement that has been secured? Well, it's based on international law, meaning there is no role for the European Court of Justice, and we will no longer be subject to EU law. All of the requirements for returning sovereignty have been achieved. We now have full economic and political independence. It's the first free trade agreement based on zero tariffs and zero quotas that the EU has agreed. Businesses will be able to trade smoothly and people will be able to continue to buy goods from Europe tariff-free. From financial services through to automotive manufacturing, the deal protects high-quality jobs and investment across the UK. This means that companies like JLR will be able to sell their vehicles into Europe on the same basis as before. The deal also means that business travellers will be able to move easily between the EU and the UK for short-term visits, and the agreement on financial services ensures stability and consumer protection. Securing UK sovereignty over our fishing waters puts us in a strong position to rebuild our fishing fleet and increase quotas, overturning the iniquity that British fishermen have faced for over 4 decades. At the end of a transition period of 5.5 years, we will have full control over our waters, and the amount of fish available to UK fishermen will have risen from half to 2/3. It continues the EU's commitment to maintaining high labour, environment and climate standards without giving the EU any say over our rules. The UK's living wage and entitlement to sick pay, parental leave and annual leave go above and beyond what the EU requires. It allows us to introduce our own subsidy system so we can better support businesses to grow and thrive. A new subsidy system or regime will operate in a way that best suits the interest of UK industries, and it frees us from EU state aid regulations. It supports the safety and security of UK citizens. It offers streamlined cooperation on law enforcement, ensuring we continue to effectively tackle serious organised crime and counter-terrorism. It protects the public, bringing criminals to justice. It also provides for future cooperation between the EU and the UK on emerging security challenges such as cyber and health security, including the need to work together on tackling the spread of COVID-19. It provides for the EU's programme in certain EU programmes which are in our interest and fulfilling our commitment to make the EU a science and research superpower. The UK will continue to participate in science and research programmes, Horizon Europe, Euratom Research and Training Programme and the Space Programme Copernicus. And it delivers for citizens, making our lives easier. It includes arrangements for airlines and hauliers and provides them with certainty and gives the people the ability to travel to and from the EU easily for work and holidays. It's a social security agreement that has practical benefits for UK citizens, including accessing healthcare when travelling in the EU, and agreements on energy which will benefit consumers by helping to keep prices down. And finally, Deputy Lord Mayor, the deal delivers to the entire UK, providing integrity of our internal market and Northern Ireland's place within it. Northern Ireland businesses will have unfettered access to the rest of the UK markets under all circumstances. There are no tariffs on goods remaining within the UK customs territory. The deal enables smooth flow of trade with no need for new physical customs infrastructure, and there is no legal confusion about that fact. While Northern Ireland remains subject to, Northern Ireland will remain subject to EU state aid regime for the duration of a protocol. Lord Mayor, as somebody who didn't vote for Brexit, I'm now firmly convinced that leaving the EU with this deal is the best possible outcome, and as such I commend this congratulatory motion to the Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your timing, Councillor Blundell. Councillor Heaven, do you wish to second now or preserve your right to speak?
Deputy Lord Mayor, I wish to second, and if I would like to speak. Yes.
Please do. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lord Mayor, I'd like to first start by saying, against all odds and all the naysayers, our Prime Minister delivered on what the people of Britain voted for. It was a proud moment for our nation, a moment in history that we witnessed democracy at its finest. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Prime Minister and his team for all their efforts in this last 12 months. Despite the pandemic, they have managed to deliver a deal based on the people's vote, both in referendum and in the general election. I would also like to thank our EU neighbours who also worked hard towards reaching an agreement on a deal. 30th of December was a proud moment for our nation. As we set an example for other EU nations, we started the new year with a new chapter as a sovereign, independent nation, a global Britain that can determine its destiny through international laws and not the EU laws. Deputy Lord Mayor, Brexit was more than just leaving EU. Brexit was about democracy, empowerment, independence, and a big vision for the future of Great Britain. We can now determine who we want to trade with in the world. We can now determine our own laws, such as the recent abolishment of tampon tax and the current ongoing consultation on banning the export of live animals for slaughter, which the impotent Labour government was unable to do when it wanted to. And these are all the things that we should all be proud of. Let's not forget our businesses who will benefit from a free trade agreement, especially SMEs, and this would also be the same for our automotive industry. Deputy Lord Mayor, on most of the issues, we are making great headway. We started our vaccination before any of the EU countries. In fact, the first person ever to be vaccinated in the world was a lovely lady by the name of Margaret Keenan, who was given the vaccine by a senior nurse, May Parson, here in our great city of Coventry. As we look in the horizon of endless opportunities, we have to mark our place in the world, striking trade deals with a new market and reasserting ourselves as a liberal and a free trading nation, acting as a force for good. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heaven. I've been notified that the following members wish to speak and will be calling them in this order. Councillors O'Boyle, Duggins, Mutton, R. Singh, Williams and Thomas. Councillor O'Boyle.
Lord Mayor, I wish to move an amendment which I believe officers will table now and put up on the screen.
Okay, I've got some words to speak then, Councillor O'Boyle. We will have paused for a few moments to enable the slide with the amendment to be loaded. Once the amendment has been moved and seconded, I will ask Councillor Ridley if his group would like an adjournment to enable them to consider the amendment. Yeah, okay, fine. Sorry. Okay. Councillor Ridley, do you wish an adjournment?
Yeah, I think we need to just take a moment, Lord Mayor, just to look at that, if that's okay.
Okay. What time is it now? 10 past. Reconvene 20 past? That's sufficient time?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay. Could all members please exit the meeting? Members of each group have recently been sent a Teams invitation to a group adjournment meeting, which you can access in the usual way, either via your council email address or Outlook calendar. When you have completed your group discussion, please close the adjournment meeting and dial back into the council meeting. Thank you. Okay. Councillor O'Boyle, would you move the amendment, and then Councillor Duckins to second?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. At a time when the country is going through the worst pandemic in its history, and it's now been announced in the last day or two that we have the highest death rate from COVID of any other country in the world, at a time where we're going through the worst recession this country has ever witnessed, and the economy continues to contract. Now, colleagues, is not the time for simple-minded slogans and self-congratulations. Now is the time for hard-headed reality and hard-headed questions for our country. But that being said, this is the least worst option for businesses, supply chains, the economy, and of course, jobs. And this deal will provide some stability and certainty for businesses. Without it, we would have no deal, which would have meant investment and jobs lost across crucial sectors. There was no reason that a deal this unambitious for Britain, though, had to be left until the final days of the transition period. The decision to delay this deal has already done unnecessary damage to businesses and the economy. And it's clear that this deal falls way short of what the government promised. The easiest deal in history, I believe, was the phrase. It neglects services, which makes up 80% of our economy and weakens our security measures. But Labour won't and hasn't opposed the deal. We won't go back and rip it up, but we will always stand up for British interests, and that will mean building on the deal. Some of the issues I just mentioned. In terms of security, the UK will no longer have access and no longer has access to EU databases which allow for real-time data sharing, such as the Schengen Information System of missing persons or objects. At the moment, or prior to last year, police officers used it on a daily basis to try to trace people with warrants issued against them, defendants or witnesses absconding from court, stolen cars, missing people, or those under surveillance. The database was consulted 600 million times by the UK police in 2019, no longer has access to it. And there's no access for the arts. The deal means musicians do not come under the exemptions for short-term business visitors, and individual states could make up their own rules, which makes it harder for businesses, for musicians to tour. This means, and that does mean, higher costs and less opportunity to platform British talent in Europe. Coming back closer to home, because it's clear that the amendment mentions Coventry, and that's where I really want to focus a bit today. The EU has been a key market, still is a key market for local businesses, so we need free and easy access across all sectors. Over 6,400 businesses in Coventry and Warwickshire currently trade with the EU, either import or exporting, compared to just 4,600 to non-EU countries. Free and easy access to EU markets for our local businesses is therefore vital. Whilst we welcome that there will be zero tariffs and quotas for producers of goods who can meet thresholds on rules of origin, i.e. high enough percentage of inputs into products originating from the UK or EU, however, all exports and imports to and from the EU will be subject to customs declarations which present particular administrative difficulties for smaller businesses. And businesses are having to evaluate their products to assess whether they qualify for zero tariff status. At least 60% of their pre-finished value must be of British or EU origin. They're also having to adapt to the costs of new paperwork, including customs declarations for goods flowing in and out of the EU. And I just draw colleagues' attention to what's happened in Northern Ireland recently. If you remember, having a customs post in the middle of the Irish Sea was something that, of course, Boris Johnson opposed when Theresa May was Prime Minister. Now it's his deal. And it's costing £150 a time for health certificates as well. And companies in the EU are getting to grips with the new tax rules, with businesses now required to change VAT to UK customers at the point of service. And as I said earlier, there is no free deal for service sector firms. Now, there will be further negotiations, but at present they need to comply with individual EU member states' rules around eligible economic activities and qualifications to work in those countries. 80% of our economy is based on that. But moving forward, and it's
Councillor Ball, one
Move
moment.
extension.
Agreed?
Yeah, agreed. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I come back to the issue, though, of tariffs, because automotive firms, which is a crucial part of our economy in Coventry, the permitted percentage of inputs into batteries from outside the UK or the EU for tariff-free trade will decrease from the current level of 70% to 50% by January 2024. In other words, what that means, colleagues, we don't start to build everything in this country, you will have massive tariffs, especially we've announced, and the government has announced quite rightly, to go to full electrification. It will make it economically impossible with tariffs unless we start to import, unless we start to build and actually invest in our economy here. That's why we're calling for a gigafactory right here in Coventry. Otherwise, we'll lose hundreds of thousands of jobs in our city and in our country. But we also need to invest in our climate change opportunities as well. It's worth saying, and there's lots of figures here, I'm not going to go through them all, but HMRC estimate they will annually process 270 million customs declarations from 2021, which is a huge increase from 55 million prior to the end of last year, which is estimated to cost around £15 billion. Midlands Engine analysis from July 2020 outlined that 61.4% of West Midlands exporters were exporting less than normal, and 51% of West Midlands exporters were importing less than normal. It's having an impact on our economy already. In October, Coventry and Warwickshire Growth Hub survey, 27% of Coventry and Warwickshire businesses were concerned the EU exit would have a negative impact on their business. Not my words, not my surveys. These are surveys of businesses. And it's important that a key part of the agreement is a reciprocal commitment not to reduce levels of protections for workers. This needs to be adhered to moving forward. And I've seen some things in the press recently that leads me to believe ministers are looking to do the exact opposite of that. We need more certainty on new subsidy control system to avoid UK regions or localities undercutting each other on subsidy sizes or intervention rates. And we are no longer part of ERDF and ESF funding after the current programming period. So the government needs to live up, as it says in the amendment, to their promises to replace that, because that has been the lifeblood of many, particularly small businesses in our city and in our region. Colleagues, I'll leave it by saying, when you add all those extra costs into businesses and into our city, we need to get this right. Our GDP is 10% less now than it was in February last year. In November last year, it's gone down 2.6%, and unemployment is rising. So we need to come together to make sure we make this work as best we can, because it's a bad deal, but it's better than no deal. That is something that we do recommend, and I do recommend the amendment to colleagues and hope that the opposition as well will support it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Boyle. Councillor Duggins, do you wish to second or reserve your right to speak?
Exactly that, Lord Mayor. How did you anticipate?
Thank you very much. I have a number of members indicating they wish to speak. Councillor Mutton, Councillor Singh, Williams, Thomas, Clifford and Councillor Ballysing. Councillor Blundell has also indicated he wishes to speak. Is there anybody else who wishes to take part?
I do as well as Councillor Lapser.
Lapser.
I will, Lord Mayor. Councillor Ridley.
Ridley. Okay. Councillor Blundell, do you wish to comment now or take your turn?
No, I'm happy to take my turn, Lord Mayor. I
okay, then
be happy.
If colleagues will bear
to...
with me, I will go through the list to balance. Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I speak in support of the amendment to this motion because, to be honest, when I first read the motion, I came over all sort of Victor Meldrew-ish. I don't believe it. I mean, to quote, is this a Tory stunt, political grandstanding? But congratulate a PM and his government for being the government to bring about the breakup of the union. My son lives in Wales and he tells me that it's a phenomenal amount of in the rise of nationalism. And there's, of course, Scotland. The call for independence there grows day by day, especially in the light of what's happening in the Scottish fishing industry. Northern Ireland. Well, it's my belief that in the foreseeable future, 26 plus 6 really will equal 1 on the island of Ireland. Councillor Boyle has already said it's a deal that does nothing for the service industries. It's a deal that ditches the Erasmus programme, from which so many of our young people have benefited. A deal that will not recognise professional qualifications and skills of certain key workers. And if you think about it, that along with the points-based immigration system and not allowing free movement of EU citizens will be a real detriment to the recruitment into the care services. There isn't even a deal on Gibraltar. Now there's a potential for future conflict if ever I saw one. And yes, we have a deal, albeit a very, very bad deal, but at least we leave without going along a no-deal route, which has been a disastrous for our businesses. So congratulations. I don't think so, Lord Mayor, and that is why I'm supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Vick. Councillor R. Singh.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, my colleagues Jim and Mel have said quite a lot of things, so and I am supporting the amendment, but I am also a bit upset, just like Councillor Mutton. And obviously, my comments are not regarding Brexit vote because that happened, but it was about Prime Minister and his team's commitment to make a deal in half a day. Remember, that's what they were saying. And it was having a frictionless trade and no detrimental effect to our food standards, environmental protections, or workers' rights. I would be surprised if the other side of the chamber have actually read the trade deal. I have read parts of it and not impressed at all. And parliamentary scrutiny of the trade deal is also stopped by Jacob Rees-Mogg. I wonder why. Apart from that, I would like to remind our colleague that the Prime Minister should also be congratulated for creating 40,000 jobs of bureaucrats for trade and border paperwork. So our new red tape clogged route to our biggest trading partners run so-called frictionless. He should also be congratulated that we will be still paying into EU because we do have obligations and fees to sit just as an observer on very few meetings where EUs will work together to make new rules and amend old ones, which will affect us, but we will have a no say. Our Prime Minister should also be congratulated on moving many of the world-class organizations related with the EU who are doing their work in Britain and gave us a fantastic opportunity to shape the direction and agenda, but sadly, they have already moved to the mainland Europe. He should also be congratulated for limiting education opportunities and putting undeserved obstructions in our children's education dreams of expanding their experience in Europe. He should also be congratulated for all the opportunities he has now to make free trade deal with the rest of the world. You know, it was not about trade, it was about free trade deal with the rest of the world. And I would like to know if our next free trade deal will be signed and working in next 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. Even 5 years will be fine, even 10 years will be fine. Yeah. Our Prime Minister team was saying that they're going to make a deal in a week or months. Let's see how long it will take. We already heard that we want Britain to take lead in genetically modified production of food because it's easier for us to do now. We already hearing a drumbeat of attacks on workers' rights. I would say stay alert for environmental protections too. Remember, we also want to be a force of good. I share that with my colleague. I share that dream with my colleagues, but I genuinely do. But I am not encouraged by this government's actions so far. So what I have seen does point me to the opposite directions. I support our amendments. Lord Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. I've got 8 speakers plus a reserved position and Councillor O'Boyle to summarise, which would take us past the 5 o'clock rule, 3-hour rule. I would like to complete this debate with your support. So could I ask colleagues to stay within their time? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I assume we're talking about the amendment, and correct. I'm working on the assumption that Councillors Blundell and Hebden aren't accepting it, otherwise he would have said so. And I'll speak specifically on the amendment. I don't like the way that they've changed the word opportunity in the original motion to challenge. It's typical of this Labour administration. They just don't believe in this country, and they'll talk it down as much as they can. You remember and you recall, Deputy Lord Mayor, the 26th of May 2016, when we had an emergency meeting to discuss the referendum. Emergency meeting, and I made my maiden speech. Only 3 of us, only 3 councillors, and I was one of them, voted in support of leaving the European Union. Councillor Duggins thought that he could influence the people of Coventry and how they could vote. He couldn't. Just shows how out of touch he was then, just shows how out of touch they are now. I don't like this amendment, and I'm going to save a bit of time and just say I'm voting against it. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Blundell.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, we won't be voting for the amendment. We'll be voting against. And I have to say that despite the best efforts of Councillor O'Boyle, the amendment, it changes some words, it changes congratulates to notes, opportunity to challenge. And it really is sort of mealy-mouthed. I think Councillor O'Boyle is forgetting that the country voted to leave the EU, and there was no certainty that a deal was going to be obtained. Coventry, I believe, voted overwhelmingly to leave the EU, and therefore we have to respect people's wishes. And this is this deal that's been secured against all odds, I have to say. And I do fully congratulate the Prime Minister on achieving that. I'm not saying that there are some issues that have got to be ironed out, and I'm not saying that the next few months won't be bumpy. But I think in the eventually we will find ourselves in a far better position than if we had left ourselves subject to the EU's EU rules and regulations. As regards the Erasmus programme, you members know full well that it's going to be replaced by a UK-led programme that will give young people the opportunity, or even more opportunity than was available to them in the Erasmus programme. And regards breaking up the union, well, the Conservative Party, and certainly one that I'm a member of, has absolutely no intention to support any breakup of the Union. We believe in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that will always be a prerequisite of the Conservative Party, and there's no intention. So, Lord Mayor, just to say that the Conservative group will be not supporting the amendment. We'll be voting against. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'd like to speak on one specific point, if I may, because we were told by Michael Gove that the deal to get us out of the European Union would be the easiest deal in history, and it obviously wasn't. One of the final sticking points in this deal was actually fishing, Deputy Lord Mayor. And whilst it's still a tiny part of our economy on both sides of the channel, it carries big political weight. Regaining control over UK waters was a key part of the Leave campaign in 2016. And now that the agreement on trade and so much else has come into force, what does it actually mean for fishing? Well, I'll run through it in a nutshell. EU boats will continue to fish in UK waters for some years to come, but UK fishing boats will get a greater share of the fish from UK waters. We won't get it all, we'll get a share. That shift in the share will be phased in between 2021 and 2026, with most of the quota transferred this year. After that, there'll be annual negotiations to decide how the catch is shared out between the UK and the EU. The UK would have the right to completely exclude EU boats after 2026, but the EU could respond with taxes on exports of British fish to the EU or by denying UK boats access to EU waters. Now, it doesn't take much to realise that there are problems with the deal with fishing. Just yesterday, trucks owned by UK shellfish wholesalers protesting about red tape were actually outside of the Houses of Parliament. Now, what have the problems been at the borders? Well, to start with, there's one Scottish wholesaler of langoustines who's having to create a mountain of langoustines because they can't export them to France. They're having to freeze them. It takes more than 3 days. But don't take my word for it. Take the words of Nerys Edwards, who's a Welsh shellfish wholesaler. She said that her lorry containing nearly 50,000 pounds of lobster, prawns and crabs had been delayed for more than 30 hours on its way to Spain. She said she'd been confident that she had completed all the necessary paperwork, but it turned out the French importer had made a mistake in his documents. And she said, basically, I can't do this again next week. I need a break. Adding that lorries from other businesses in the queue for the same ferries had also been refused. So the claims that were made about us having complete control are a fallacy, Lord Mayor. We will still have to bow to a certain degree to the European Union, and all of this without having any say in the European Parliament. So therefore, I cannot, in all conscience, Deputy Lord Mayor, support the original motion congratulating the Prime Minister and the government on the deal that they've made. However, I will be wholeheartedly supporting the Labour Group amendment. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Lapser.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do apologise, some technical issues.
We all seem to be having them today.
Yeah, it will be no surprise to the Chamber that I'll be voting against this amendment. It's not in the spirit of the motion. Hard-headed reality, Councillor Boyle mentioned. Well, the reality is the country voted to leave and Boris got the deal. And because of Labour losing to so many seats in the north, we got an 80-seat majority. And it also mentioned left to the final days. That was because of the EU. They always leave it until the last minute before they concede anything. My colleagues have spoken well regarding taking back our own control and becoming a sovereign state once again, which make us an independent and free nation. Let me put the record straight. I love Europe and the people of Europe. But what I have disliked with an intensity was the political landscape that the EU wanted to create and dominate. Anti-democratic, corrupt in the extreme, and bureaucratic beyond belief. And one of the members opposite mentioned about creating jobs. For goodness sake, look at the way the EU create jobs in the gravy train. It does not now matter if you voted Remain or Leave. Boris Johnson has secured a Brexit in line with our manifesto commitments. All the Labour group's comments are comics from what we call Remoaners. Don't you understand yet? The country voted to leave and you lost the North. Democracy has won. Boris has a deal. And that is what you said he wouldn't get. And this amendment is, I feel, is just having a go and is not in the spirit of the emotion whatsoever. Look at the Coventry's results. And in some Labour-controlled areas, you had people voting to leave as high as 70%. Even after that type of result, some of you wanted to overturn the result. It was only when you lost the vote that the Remain campaign, or the Remoan campaign, as some people call it, started. And it was bitter, nasty. And one of the reasons now we have an 80-seat majority is that's enabled Boris Johnson to get this deal is because of the way in which you've acted in the past. The scare stories touted by sore losers since the referendum have not happened and will not happen, such as calling it a bad deal. And even now, Councillor Boyle wants to allude to this. The country voted to leave, Boris got the deal, let's go forward, doing our own trade deals, which we are doing. I look at the way Trump is trying to cling on to power and after a democratic process and is very distasteful. I agree with George's comments regarding Trump, but I have to say that during the last few years, you lot, or against Brexit, I admit not all of you, but a few of you are just like that. But during the debate, you sound as if you want to overturn the result again. Well, Labour supporters voted for Tory Brexit, and your comments will ensure some, if not loads of them, will remain with us. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lapson. Councillor Clifford.
Deputy Lord Mayor, thank you very much. I don't think it really matters whether we're for or against it. Being a member of Europe, you're right. The referendum was won, and we're going to have to live with that. What this amendment was about really was congratulating the Prime Minister on the deal that he had, and I don't think there's anything to congratulate him about. But I would like to take issue with what Councillor Heaven had said about the first vaccine, which Margaret Keenan received at UHCW, and we were all kind of very proud of that day. And I think we ought to understand that it was an international effort. It was an American company based in Germany with Turkish immigrants who developed the vaccine, which was manufactured in Belgium, and then it was our regulators approved it for delivery in the UK. It was transported through Belgium, through France, through the tunnel, eventually arrived here. And Margaret Keenan was an Irish lady, was the first person to receive it. It was a true international effort, and we ought to be proud of that. The delivery of the vaccine is not a race. My wife received hers today, and I'm receiving mine tomorrow, and I'm pleased about that. But I'm just as anxious that people, particularly in developing countries, should be able to get hold of the vaccine. And we ought to stop this nonsense of that, how good it is that we were first. We ought to concentrate on making sure that everybody in the world who needs it gets it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor, for your wise words. Councillor Singh, Bally Singh.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to, thank everyone for speaking at the debate, whether I disagree or agree with you. I think your comments on this matter are well made, all those that have spoken, and will vote on this debate. In terms of the points already made, I won't repeat those points, especially from colleagues on our side of the chamber. But I think for me, the issue is around, the amendment to the debate motion, and this amendment recognises the reality of where we are, the situation, and actually it puts us on a good forward footing to recognise the opportunities, but also the challenges ahead of the future, ahead of us in the future. I think the opposition debate motion, it didn't recognise any of the paperwork or the red tape issues that are impacting many people and businesses in the UK right now. I won't repeat that because it's well publicised in the media. There's lots of challenges for our businesses, for example, rules of origin, and this just creates extra bureaucracy and red tape, and in effect it makes our businesses on a lesser competitive footing than to our European competitors in terms of access to the single market, and that is something we need to recognise, and therefore all of us, including government, must do our best to support that situation for our businesses and the people who are employed in those businesses. But I think the main point is a lot of the comments that I've heard, particularly from the opposition, they're not really befitting of where we want to go as a country now. I think, there is a kind of an opportunity, and the opportunity is basically time is now to move on from this debate. We need to move on, and we need to recognise that actually it's not a test of who is more patriotic than the other. I think all of us members here support and love this country, and we want the most for this country so that people here can get on and do better in their lives. I think that is without question, and I think we must approach the future with that mindset. And terms like Ramona or we won, you lost are not really befitting. And I urge the leader of the opposition benches to have a word with his colleagues in that regards. I think also the Brexit deal is not a great deal personally, but I think it's an opportunity now to move on. The challenges have been well recognised.
Can you conclude the remarks, Councillor Singh?
Yes, I will. And I also think it gives us an opportunity to be more accountable to the British public. And I think the amended debate motion lives up to the test of that, of recognising the reality of where we're in. And therefore, I fully support the amended motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lloyd.
Sorry, Chair, I haven't signalled.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm just going to try and address some of the comments that have been made so far this afternoon. It's the second time I've followed Bally Singh this afternoon. It's the second time he's attacked me personally. I don't think I've heard him speak so much in this chamber for a couple of years. One might be forgiven for thinking there was an election coming up or something. But if there's anyone talking disrespectfully, Bally, then it's you with your dreadful comments earlier, calling us trolls. So maybe you'd like to reflect on your language in that earlier part of the meeting. But on this particular debate, then it's fair to say that we won't be voting for this amendment. Quite clearly, it is not just against the spirit of the original motion, it almost negates the meaning of the original motion, because we were talking about opportunity and you're talking about challenges. And that just about sums up the last sort of 4 or 5 years to this debate, doesn't it, really? Let me start with an admission first. 9 years ago, I went to, 10 years ago, actually, I went to go and work for the European Parliament, where I worked there for 4 years. I then campaigned to remain and voted to remain inside the European Union. The big difference between me and some of the people on your side of the chamber is that I accepted the outcome of that election the very next day and was absolutely clear that it needed to be implemented. We've had all this talk about right-wing Tory Brexits, and if you support Brexit, you're racist and all the rest of it, and no Labour supporter or people on the left support it. And look what happened. It was Labour supporters who voted us out of the European Union. You can see it on the results, and you could see it in the general election last year. You guys lost several seats all across the country in Labour areas, and you very nearly lost 2 seats in Coventry off the back of it. And some of you are still in denial. Just to address some of the comments that colleagues have made this afternoon, I'm not going to take any lectures from Mal Mutton about the union. Jeremy Corbyn spent most of his life, as recently as 2 years ago, talking about a united Ireland. There are people in the Labour Party that would be delighted at the prospect of a united Ireland and delighted at the prospect of an independent Scotland. And as for the comments about Gibraltar, Mal, we have got a deal on Gibraltar, actually. They've entered the Schengen Agreement. So, again, that's not factually correct. The other point I would make is that Remoaners, I'm sorry, Bally, but they are Remoaners, over the last few years mortgaged the kitchen sink on overturning the democratic people's vote to leave the European Union. The reality is a closer deal was on the table just a couple of years ago when Theresa May was Prime Minister, and every single Remoaner got together. The Labour Party played their part in that as well, and they voted it down. And what happened? We got a general election which resulted in a clean break Brexit. And we got a general election in which it was not just about whether or not we wanted to be in Europe, it was about democracy. And Councillor Lapser is absolutely spot on. There is nothing worse than politicians trying to denigrate the legitimate outcome of a democratic political process. And there are people in this country who have never accepted the outcome of that referendum. I motor-voted Remain, Lord Mayor, but I am not a Remoaner. The point of this motion was to recognise the fact that you had all told us how difficult it was going to be to get a deal with the European Union. We've got a deal with the European Union. We're going forward with that deal with the European Union. You guys need to get over the fact that you lost, and you need to get in your game for the benefit of all of us moving forward as one country.
Thank you, Councillor Ridley. Councillor Khan, A. Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor. Hopefully I'll be brief. I mean, as other colleagues have been doing, listening to this debate, so wanted to come in and say, look, the reality is that Labour members are not and have not been critical about the outcome of the referendum. So it's disingenuous to say that is the case. We are critical, or are critical of the way in which the original motion, which you presented, the Tory group presented, was framed. It talked in congratulatory terms, but the reality, and the British public and people in Coventry know, there's nothing to congratulate the government for. The deal we've got is the worst of the worst. What the government did is they waited till the last minute. They tried to be bullies, as the Trump government in America did. They thought that by trying to play hardball, they'd get a deal, or a different deal, and we'll just run the clock down, make everybody desperate. In fact, we've got the bare bones necessary to enable us to carry on functioning. It became apparent, obviously, to the government at the last minute that they needed to ensure that our lorry drivers, our businesses in the UK could obviously transact their business in Europe. So they've entered into this deal. Colleagues will know partway through, the government sought to persuade Parliament that they should act unlawfully and change the terms of a pre-written agreement law before. That doesn't speak of a government that's worthy of congratulations. Those who have read around the proposed government proposals, it's clear that not only does it break the law, but it paves the way for further breaking of the law, and it in my opinion, has damaged the UK's reputation as being an honest broker, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. So the motion that Councillor O'Boyle has put forward is right and proper. And as I've said, and I'll say just before I finish my comments, we are not Ramonas, and nobody in this debate has criticised the outcome of the referendum. We all accept that we must make the best of what we can. But your government, the Tory government, has screwed up the position by not being a fair and honest broker with our friends in Europe. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Duggins, you exercise your right to speak. You're on mute.
Here we go again. Listen very carefully to the debate. I mean, colleagues, I think we've accepted the result and long since accepted the result. Certainly on this side of the chamber. So there is no sense of bemoaning or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't welcome the result. I thought it was a wrong, a misstep, but it was democracy. And you know, over the years, colleagues, I've been, like many, been on the receiving end of results that we haven't liked nationally, but have always accepted them. So in any way, shape or form, to anybody to compare us to Trump and the way he carried on about total denial of an election result is missing the point by a long way. Colleagues, this amendment, in actual fact, whilst less congratulatory, and it's right that it is actually far more ambitious for this country. And I'll tell you why it's more ambitious. It's internationalist in tone. It promotes the city of Coventry, and it looks to a greener world in which we clearly look to combat climate change. Now, this is ambitious, and we should be signing up to that ambitious, colleagues, rather than just congratulating the government on what is a very thin agenda agreement. And the thinness of that agreement, I think, is generally accepted by many who voted for it. And it is just basically a stepping stone to what will be needed in the future. Colleagues, there are difficulties at the moment, and Christine has outlined some of that difficulties, and so has Jim. But the problem is, colleagues, unfortunately, these difficulties are not as Dominic Raab says, are not as Boris Johnson says, teething difficulties. They're actually baked in. But colleagues, the one thing that we have asked in here is that, you know, the money that has been lost or potentially lost in respect to government funding from Europe is protected. And if you look at the European structural fund, then what you do see is the fact that Coventry and Warwickshire was due somewhere in the region of £140 million. Now, you know, I think we need to know how the government intend to effectively make good on that. It was clear in 2016, and it was Philip Hammond who actually promised it, that all monies lost from Europe would in actual fact be made good. And colleagues, that clearly needs to effectively be confirmed. And it's not just about whether we stay or whether we go, it's for the benefit of this city. And I would have thought that the Conservative opposition would want to see a guarantee of what is beneficial for this city.
Thank you, Councillor Duggins. I have another speaker wishing to contribute to the amendment. I intend to take that person. Are there any others who wish to contribute? Okay. Councillor Heatherton, and then I will call Councillor O'Boyle to conclude the debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, and just the vision of Britain able to negotiate trade deals around the world that better play to the country's strengths in services and financial ones in particular. But, you know, this is yet to be seen in practice because the Brussels officials question both whether Whitehall has the bandwidth for what is to come and the sincerity of Johnson's claim that his deal finally settles the European question in his party and the wider country. There are too many pointers to the opposite being true. And if you just look at the impending flashpoints and the potential for European obsessions to be stirred, Great Britain now has the ability to diverge from the EU environmental, social and labour regulatory standards in the future. But in doing so, it opens itself up to tariffs on exports into its biggest market. The UK may close its waters to European fishing fleets in 5.5 years, but again, the trade deal foresees consequences in terms of closure of the European market to British exporters. Politically inspired demands will again rub up against the economic consequences. And perhaps most significantly of all, the question of EU membership will be central to the great political debate in the UK, Scottish independence. As the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, never tires of saying, no part of Scotland backed Brexit. But Johnson's deal outside the single market and the customs union means as a matter of EU law that an independent Scotland, newly acceded to the EU, would need to erect a full-fat customs border with England. Johnson has his trade deal and there should be cause for relief in that. But rather than take the question of the UK's relationship with Europe out of the British political debate, the terms of a great plank in the middle of the centre of a way, unthinkable even a decade away, there isn't an obvious way back. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heatherton. Councillor O'Boyle, could you close the debate, please?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm a bit surprised by the tone the debate has taken, really, because, and it's disappointing, quite honestly. I think I echo the comment that Councillor Bally-Singh said. You know, this is about the future, not the past. And I think I made that very, very clear when I spoke. And I asked that people support it, that we work together, and we actually talk about getting deals. We talk about green jobs, opportunities, whether it is with VLR locally, electrification. We're falling behind in this country where gigafactories are being built all over Europe. We haven't even took a decision as to build one yet in this country. And if we don't do that, hundreds of thousands of jobs are at risk. We need to move forward, not backwards. And there were some rather, disappointing words from Councillor Lapser and Blundell. I asked that we work together, as I said, and for Councillor Ridley to almost say that it was the Labour Party that lost the referendum, I really am perplexed by that. And I just make this point. He raised Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn's gone, Gary. I don't know if you've noticed, but he's gone. The Labour Party are moving forward. It's under new management, and perhaps we need new management for the Tories locally as well. Here's the point. I'm not raising these things out of thin air. Whether it's the Food and Drink Federation's raised concerns and questions, quite rightly, that's all that I was doing. Whether it's Make UK, the manufacturing organisations have some concerns about the deal. Whether it's the Federation of Small Businesses, the British Chamber of Commerce, the Confederation for British Industry. I mentioned some of the local SMEs have got concerns, the difficulties they've got. I mentioned the fact that the Midlands Engine have talked about a drop in exports and imports, and that the Growth Hub have done a survey. These aren't me making them up. I'm just bringing that to the attention. We need to bring it forward. It will be a challenge. Of course it will. Let's be honest. Let's use language we understand. And let us move forward. 2021 is already a difficult year. And if we don't come together as a country, and instead of fighting the arguments of the past and we don't look to the future, we will continue. And I tell you now, we want to learn the lessons of the past and learn from that and make the right decisions now, because we make the wrong decisions, as we've seen all too often throughout the pandemic in this country, that has seen this country end up with the highest death rate in the whole of the world because of decisions taken too late. Now's the time to come together and say, let us vote for this, let us move forward, and let us come together as a country, because that way we've got an opportunity to be successful. So thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and that's me done.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Clearly there is consensus on this, so I will call for the vote by name and hand over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Morris.
Councillors are voting on the amendment to the debate at 8.2. Can councillors indicate for, against or abstain? Councillor Abbott? For. Councillor N. Akhtar?
For.
Councillor P. Akhtar?
For.
Councillor M. Ali?
For.
Councillor R. Ali?
For.
Councillor Andrews?
Against.
Councillor Orlock?
For.
Councillor Bailey?
Against.
Councillor Bigham?
For.
Councillor Birdie? Councillor Blundell?
Against.
Councillor K. Khan?
For.
Councillor Clifford?
For.
Councillor Duggins?
For.
Councillor Gittins? Councillor Gittins? Move on. Councillor Harvard?
For.
Councillor Hare?
For.
Councillor Heathen?
Very against.
Councillor Heatherton?
For.
Councillor Innes? Councillor Innes?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jandu?
Against.
Councillor Kelly? Oh, sorry, Councillor A. Khan?
For.
Councillor Lacker?
For.
Councillor Lancaster? Councillor Lancaster? Move on. Thank you. Councillor Lapsar?
Against.
Councillor Podovan?
Against.
Councillor Lloyd?
For.
Councillor Mayle?
Against.
Councillor Mayton? Councillor Mayton?
For.
Councillor Mayer? Councillor Mayer? Move on. Councillor Mix?
For.
Councillor M. Mutton? For. Councillor O'Boyle?
For.
Councillor Ridley?
Against.
Councillor Ruan?
For.
Councillor Sandu?
For.
Councillor Sorden?
Against.
Councillor Seaman? Councillor Seaman?
For.
Councillor B. Singh?
For.
Councillor R. Singh?
For.
Councillor Skinner?
Against.
Councillor Thay?
For.
Councillor Thomas?
For.
Councillor Walsh?
For.
Councillor Welsh?
For.
Councillor Williams?
Against.
Deputy Lord Mayor?
For.
I have 32 for and 13 against. The amendment's carried.
Lord Mayor, can I just say that Councillor Gittins has just texted me and said that she's having problems with her Teams,
Okay.
but she says she will be voting for the amendment. It's totally
we'll
up to the Lord Mayor.
We'll include that vote.
And I can.
There have been technical difficulties this afternoon.
And I'm quite
all
happy
around.
for people to actually have access to that on my phone.
Thank you very much.
Lord
Okay,
Mayor,
could
apologies. I had my hand on up. I couldn't unmute the phone, but it was against.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please add that to the vote. Okay. Right, with colleagues mute. Clearly the amendment has been carried and will become the substantive motion. Can I invite any speakers now? I see none. I will take it then that the Okay, Councillor O'Boyle, you have the right to speak on the substantive motion. Do you wish to exercise that?
Well, if other people are going to speak, I might want to sort of come in later.
We have no indication at all.
If not, no one wants to, let's just move on, because I think everyone said everything they want to say. It's been passed, and I'll leave it at that, Lord Mayor.
Okay, can I I'll ask Councillor Ridley, do we have a consensus or do we need to vote?
No, we don't have a consensus, Lord Mayor. The Conservative group will be abstaining on this particular item.
Can I take it as read from the monitoring officer that that's an indication? Councillor Williams, are you abstaining?
No, Deputy Lord Mayor, I vote against.
Vote. Okay, that's an indication then that those in attendance, the Labour group will support the substantive, Conservatives abstain, Independent will vote against. We know the result of that vote. We don't need to go for a named vote, do we? Is Council content with that position?
Yes, John. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
definitely.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Right. We have now concluded the business, I believe. Can I just take the opportunity of thanking everybody for their cooperation this afternoon? And you've made it relatively easy for me. Apologies for the breakdown in some of the IT. We will look into that matter. And also, I know Councillor Lucas was hoping to observe this afternoon if allowed. If she has, I'm sure you'll agree with me, we will offer her our best wishes today and look forward to her coming back in the chair as quickly as possible. Thank you very much, colleagues, and I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
John, well done.